wish you could take me away, but nothing will happen today. Baby, I just want you to say are you, want you, are you, want you, are you, want you, baby, I just want you to say are you, want you, are you, want you, are you, want you, baby, I just want you to say hola, 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 baby, I just want you to say that hola, 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 hola. Never saw you. You saw me back and nothing new. Please don't be shy. I know that you feel like me too. Don't be afraid. Give me your love, baby. Give me your hand now, and I just wanna go with you anywhere. I feel like I'm not awake. I wish you could take me away, but nothing will happen today. Give me love, give me all you can. I feel like I'm not awake. I wish you could take me away, but nothing will happen today. Baby, I just want you to say are you, want you, are you, want you, are you, want you, baby, I just want you to say are you, want you, are you, want you, are you, want you, baby, I just want you to say baby, I just want you to baby, I just want you to say
I was ready to surrender my heart to you, only you. These lights all around me keep blinding my eyes from you and the truth. Don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me why. I know, no, no, you won't save my life, save my life. Baby, keep on, you're making the waves. You and I will never be saved, be saved. If the walls come down, will you pick me off the ground? If the walls come down, will you save me or burn me down? I was ready to surrender my heart to you, only you. These lights all around me keep blinding my eyes from you and the truth. Don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me why. I know, no, no, you won't save my life, save my life. Baby, keep on, you're making the waves. You and I will never be saved, be saved. If the walls come down, will you pick me off the ground? If the walls
Thanks for listening to Spotify.
I am so high whenever you are near to me. Swear I can fly without any fear. I'm free. You know I'm in it for that fever. That only we got it feeling. Let's make love till the dawn. Let's make love. Let's make love, 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 love. I am so high whenever you are near to me. Swear I can fly without any fear. I'm free. You know I'm in it for that fever. That only we got it feeling. Let's make love till the dawn. Let's make love. Let's make love.
We still have music up here. Oh, there you go. Very good.
All right, I will call the board meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Our meeting tonight is, school board meetings are held in public, but they are not public meetings. And so if there is any visitors that are here tonight that wish to speak to an agenda item, when that item comes before the board, they must state their name and address and speak specifically to that particular agenda item. And there is a pink purplish form that that you need to complete and give to Jake at the end of the table prior to that item coming before the board. So now, DT, I'm going to turn it over to you because we are going to do board awards.
Absolutely. So apparently we are about winning state championships here in Norwalk this year. So let's give a round of applause to our 2 state championship teams that are here. So who knew in March when we were heading towards the state tournament for basketball that soon after the basketball tournament ended, we would enter a global pandemic and schools would be closed in the state of Iowa and across the country and the world through the end of the school year. And so it was definitely a bright, shining moment prior to some dark times. So we really appreciate the basketball team and what you did to raise the spirits and lift our community pride. Unusual circumstances, right? I think we had 100 fans that could attend that championship game. Of course, we had thousands watching online. And so we really want to celebrate our state basketball tournament team. So this is the way it's going to work. We're gonna come up, so players and coaches are gonna come up. Everybody, players, coaches, you get a medal. And normally the board members come around, shake hands, and put those medals on your neck. But I would invite you all to come up and grab a medal. And then we're gonna distance ourselves just a little bit along the stage. And we'll take pictures. And then Coach Larson, if you would introduce or have everybody introduce yourselves, and if you want to say a few words about the state championship season, I'd appreciate that. So Coach Larson and our state championship boys basketball team, come on up.
Come on up. Grab a medal. Grab a medal. I didn't know. What did he say? On stage or down here? On stage? On stage. Yeah, all right. All right, I'll introduce everybody here real quick. Starting off with our coaching staff. I'll start up here. You should be down here as well. So Coach Lowell is one of our assistant coaches as well. You guys get to spend a lot of time with him and does a great job for us. Coach Fisher, Coach Pelzer, obviously, are on the varsity staff with us. And then I'll just kind of go down the line and wave when they go, guys. Aaron Taylor is a senior. Vinny Morrow is a sophomore. Tyler Johnson is a senior. Kyle Joniak it's hard when they have masks on, kind of. Like Kyle Joniak is a senior. Evan Borst is a junior. Jake Fees is a senior. Hayden Havoc is a junior. Max Rohr is really trying to hide himself. He is a junior. Tyler Wegner is a junior. Will Crozier is a sophomore. And that's Joe Brown, I believe, who is a junior. Grant Larson is a junior. Max Jurgens is a junior. Sam Eggers is a junior. Can't see everybody down there. Ethan Carlson is a junior as well. As far as just things to say, obviously it was a unique circumstances and a great run. Oh yeah, come on up, girls. Oh, we have a couple managers here as well. Definitely, get up here. Katie Fees, who is Jake Fees' sister, is one of our managers, and Savannah Wheeler is another one of our managers, and we had wonderful managers and support. And that's just where I'd like to go, especially in front of the board, is just to say, one thing that I love about basketball season and when you make runs like this is how much of a community thing that it becomes. And I think you can just even see by the big group we have and the support not only by by our players, but when our managers and then the whole community and the student body gets behind you, that's really what makes it so much fun. And then sometimes what made it so tough at the end of this year because you felt a little bit disconnected the way it all ended. But to get so many notes and to see so many things that I still will never probably forget that bus ride out of town, and I'm sure you guys are going to say similar things that just to see the community behind you. And then my final thing in terms of that, just to get to share this with the baseball team, some of you probably remember that in 2009, we got second in state, and they won the state title in 2009. And some of you guys who are sitting here, the one thing I would say, or the thing that is most in common between those two teams is the way that the kids supported each other. And not all the kids, you're going to see some of these kids just stay up here when the baseball team comes up here. Others will sit down. But what's really cool, like I see Tucker right there. And Tucker, did you miss a basketball game this year? Maybe a couple? Yeah, not many, right? And I don't know if Drew's here, but I know Tucker and Drew were at darn near every basketball game. And it was pretty cool if you were at the state championship baseball game. I know a lot of our guys who were up here were in the front row, and when Jake was on the mound, they were like, for that last out, just begging for that last out. And to me, that is what community and school should all be about, because it's not just about yourself or even your own team, but the supporting of each other. And the two championship teams and championship game teams that we had, I would just say that was one thing that really had in common, and hopefully you guys take that away for the rest of your lives with you. So thanks for having us here, and thanks for the award, and great job, guys.
Okay, and we have some more medals up by my spot if we need some more medals. So not to be outdone by the basketball team, the boys baseball team had a great run through the postseason, and Coach Wiedemann will talk about kind of the end of the season and how that played out. But what for me was a crossover between these two seasons was that the boys basketball team looked like they were going to finish, you know, and no problem, like we got this, and had to make it interesting at the end. Like, what just happened? Oh, we won a state title. Well, that was interesting. And so the baseball team thought, we're going to do the same thing. We'll just make it interesting for everybody. And so it was a very, very exciting way to end the baseball season, an unexpected baseball season, honestly, because we didn't know for sure if we would have summer sports after not having spring sports. And so once again, another bright light through some dark times that we're going through right now. So we want to give a round of applause to our state championship Norwalk Warriors baseball team. And here's Coach Wiedemann.
First of all, congratulations to the basketball team. Tremendous accomplishment, and in that, just sad that we couldn't all be there to support you, but know that everyone was at home watching and rooting you on. Moving on to the baseball team, just to introduce who we have up here: Coach Stolo, Dylan Christensen, Evan Borst, Kale Eck, Vinnie Morrow, Jake Fees, Tucker Christensen, Grant Miller, Brock Miller, Gabe Hester, Tyler Wegner, and Ryan Wood. Those are the ones that could make it here tonight. Did have some others text us that said that I think some seniors are still trying to get some college stuff ready to go. Just to echo the sentiments that Coach Larson had, tremendous run. When it came down to it here 12 weeks ago, I had just a glimmer that we would be having a baseball season, and to finish it out, couldn't be more thankful for our seniors and the leadership that they showed in getting guys together and making sure that everyone was ready to go when we did get a chance to start June 1st. Really, when it came down to it, these guys were just gutting it through the whole month of July. As I said the other night, they just forgot how to lose and got it done. Once again, as DT mentioned, had to make it interesting in the seventh inning there in the first round and in the finals, but very proud of the group, and got a couple announcements. We had an all-state meeting on Friday, and don't shoot this out on public media or anything, but we have some congratulations that are in order. I'll make that announcement in private with the group later on, and they can inform you. So with that, thank you to the board. Appreciate your support, and congratulations once again to these guys.
Hey, DT, while we're settling up stuff, I had a parent ask if we had enough room in the new trophy cases and the impact for all these. We certainly need more rafters for our banners.
Woo, state champs. Awesome. Congrats.
Okay. Moving back to the agenda. Open forum, Jake, did we have any forms? Okay. All right, the next item is consent agenda. Are there any questions from board members?
Any late additions since yesterday for personnel open enrollment being the ones that traditionally change?
To the microphone? Can you go to the microphone? Thanks.
That's okay. Yeah, so a couple, if you scroll down, that were, I had some background checks I ran on.
No.
Can you hear me? It's on and there's a green light.
Click on it. Oh, it is. Okay, just talk closer maybe.
Okay.
There
Oh,
you
there we
go.
go. Hello. So if you scroll down a little ways on the personnel, there were a couple that I had ran background checks on Friday that I was just waiting to get back. So I had to add those here midday when they came back. And then I did just want to clarify on the new FTEs for Oviatt, about half of those are actually pre-K para FTEs that were reallocated to K1. So we did not end up adding that half section of preschool, so we're down a full section of preschool from last year as far as, no, you're fine. Congrats, guys. As far as teaching sections go, so we reallocated some of those pre-K special ed paraeducators up to kindergarten and first grade and followed those kids up. But we counted them as new because, you know, preschool is different from. Yes. We may need to hire more preschool paras if we add that section back.
Okay.
So it looks like a lot of new positions, but in reality, about half of them are reallocations.
Any other questions on the personnel report and open enrollment? Jake, was there any changes to that? I don't see any.
Next question on the consent agenda. Kate, I had sent a message about the CDs that maybe the rest of the group would care to know what you guys have been working on those.
Yes, thanks, Director Fletcher. As you well know, we received the funding from the GO bond sale, the $17 million. And under IRS law, or I guess not law, but the IRS provisions, we can invest those funds during the period. And normally we put them in 6-month or 1-year intervals of CDs with local banks, and we bid here in the metro area. And we did invest those in 3 different vehicle CDs, 2 $5 million CDs. There were 17 million total. 2 $5 million 1-year CDs, and then 1 6-month $6 million CD. We retained the 1.2 million roughly for ongoing expenses as we keep progressing through this project. Very grateful too. We unfortunately during these strange times we're only paying 1.83% interest borrowing rate, but the investment rate is very, very marginal too. And we were lucky to have a 0.52 interest rate bid on the 1 years from City State Bank. They were the only bidder that we did receive. David is not here tonight, but the only bidder received for any of our funds. And then a 0.46 on the 6-month, $6 million.
Thank you. question I didn't have a chance to submit this morning, but the backpack program with volunteers in the school, have we worked out a transition of being able to get that? I know the contract in general is one we've done in the past, but in terms of we worked on logistics without having extra visitors in the buildings.
We have not worked out all the details in regard to that, but we'll have approved visitors. Of course, any visitors that do come into the buildings will be required to go through the Raptor system and acknowledge whether or not they have any specifically COVID-19 symptoms. And then best case scenario is that we can do some type of exchange where they don't have to come into the building with the food. So we'll work that out with the principals.
Any other questions?
On the last item of the consent agenda, I had sent a question about number of investigations and forms that were submitted for the bullying and the handbook. Is that something you want to talk about now since we're talking about the handbook in this agenda, or do you want to carry that as an agenda item for later?
No, and I apologize. I know I typed an email. If it didn't get sent to you, I apologize for that. The statistics, Eric Neeson will compile those, and we'll get those to the board at a different meeting. Yeah, for a future meeting.
Can we add that to our future agenda items then at the end, when we get to the end of the
Yep,
meeting?
absolutely.
Okay. Other questions?
No, no further questions. If no one else does, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended and discussed at this meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Correspondence. So we have board subcommittee reports. The first one is capital projects.
So we've met last week, or it was earlier this week actually, with Bishop Engineering to go over some of the paving projects for the ball fields. Went through, answered the last few final questions and made a few minor adjustments and gave them a little bit of direction there. There will be, I think, a meeting next Monday, I think, just because of the way the schedule worked out, the bidding schedule, Kate? Yep, special meeting next Monday, just to make sure that we can sequence the project in time, give public notice, get bids, and just get construction started in time to beat winter. I think that's about it. No NPEC info to report on right now.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Employee experience, that's me. We met on July 29th, and we went through a staffing update, and which you saw most of that on the personnel report. Allison also provided a return to learn work update, or actually DT did that, I'm sorry. Discussed current return to learn recommendation based on the current guidance and how that impacts staff and students. We had no new updates on insurance, although that's going to be a standing item on our agendas, but there was no new information to share there. So two of the things that we did discuss that were newer, we talked about coaching contracts, and the district is considering contracts to be prorated based on the amount of the season completed. And they're also considering classifying the non-salaried contracts, like the citizen contracts, as at-will employees. And Kate and Allison are going to provide more clarification on this at a future meeting. And then Allison also shared with us the return to work plan, and we went through that draft, and the committee approved it. And so that is on the agenda today. And our next meeting is scheduled for August 29th. Financial services, yeah, Justin.
Yeah, our July meeting, we passed on a meeting, and I think that time might have been reallocated for capital projects, but made a decision in July that the financial services did not have enough agenda or need to meet at the time, and we'll meet again third week in August.
Okay. And instructional services.
We met on August 6th. There was several representatives there, and they went through an overview of the new Canvas and Seesaw systems, along with discussing some more of what the Google Classroom is able to do. They explained a lot of the hard work that they've been doing this whole summer. They've got a lot of the teachers and themselves putting schedules and getting ready for the school year. So a tremendous amount of work that's been done. So I feel like even though there may be some bumps when we start, they're on their way, which will be great. As of that date, we had 28 new teachers. On August 8th, they will start receiving training and support, which includes time in their classroom, and their instructional coaches and mentors will be there as well to help them along. They have set up this Google Classroom that they keep a lot of their data in that the new teachers can review and go back to, and they keep adding to that every year, so I think it's a great resource. There was some recommendations from DMAC to change some grading. However, that's being held off, so we don't have to worry about that this year. DT will continue to monitor that. And we discussed the return to learn plan, just some of the new guidance that was going on and the possible changes that may need to occur, which will be a big topic of our board meeting today.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, we have policy.
So we met on July 16th, so it's been quite a while ago now. But first thing we talked through was the band symbols and potentially how we wanted to potentially address that. We decided that it'd probably be best to put that in handbook language rather than put it in actual policy. DT was going to check with Christy Latta about one additional question that came up during the conversation. I don't think anything has been formally changed yet on that, but it was just discussed. We moved on to return to learn draft plan, and all of my notes are pretty outdated by now. Everything's pretty much changed, so no sense in going through any of that. Then we moved into the actual policy, went through the policy primer update, went through 500 series policy review. Most of that information is actually on the agenda tonight, so I won't get into detail there. Talked briefly about Title IX policy draft. Sounds like it's changing pretty drastically and coming out on the 14th, potentially.
Yes.
They've got forms that are available for use. I think admin team is just going to use the forms.
Yeah, we will present that with the rollout of Title IX changes. If push comes to shove, obviously we're going to follow the law, and we'll use the sample documents until the board formally approves everything, which will be in the upcoming probably next 2 meetings.
Okay. And then just the final question that we talked about was just all the waivers that we've been making to policy, how they're kept track of, and they're not necessarily kept track of, but they are waived for just 1 year, so they will expire, but changes are pushed out to parents and students. Next meeting's August 20th.
All right, thanks, Brian. Moving on to the next agenda item, DT, you have the enrollment update?
Yeah, so these are just preliminary numbers right now as we enroll new students and have some students depart our district as well. So Becky Anthony, want to give her a big shout out for all of her her work as our student information specialist and registrar, and all of our building secretaries, principals, everybody that assists with helping us. And this year has been an additional interesting item just because of the required remote learning requests that we're also processing. So as of today, we have 3,261 pre-K through 12th graders. 37 are currently enrolled in PK, 198 in kindergarten. So that would put us up, and this is a K-12 enrollment change, would put us up about 38 students as of today. So that number will change as we approach the school year and we approach certified enrollment. And of course, once we get into October, Kate will provide you more specific information about certified enrollment. So we're up. Not quite as much as we anticipated, but some other districts around the metro would say the same thing, that just based on COVID, there's an impact on some student enrollment.
DT, did you say 198 for kindergarten?
Yeah, 198 as of today. Well, I shouldn't say as of today. I'll have to look and see. This was yesterday, 9:12 p.m.
Okay, that seems a little low.
Yeah, we would anticipate, based on the past couple years and what was anticipated, about 250 kindergartners, somewhere in that range.
Okay. Have we reached out to our preschool partners or see if anybody's balked, kept kids back a year just from I mean,
Yeah, so
and I know we'll have some late arrivals, right? We got 2 weeks and we'll have people right up to the day still
Yeah.
showing up to register.
And so I want to compliment Amy Gage and her team at Oviatt Elementary. Amy has been working with Becky Anthony, and they have been reaching out. I think Nicole Carroll is helping out as well, Nicole Benegas, our new assistant principal at Oviatt. And so they are following up on all those pre-registrations we have, because our kindergarten registration works a little bit different, where we try to get an idea of before we start our actual enrollment and registration. And so we have seen those numbers kind of tick up, and we anticipate that they may continue to go up. But it's a tough year, just across the country. And so I think what you'll see is some parents who decide to wait on kindergarten, and that will have an impact on us this year and then next year more than likely. And that's the same as what I'm hearing from some other districts, especially in the metro.
But based on that, and kindergarten being one that we traditionally like to have the smallest of the class sizes, if we were estimating 250 or 230 to 250, it's 2-ish to 3 sections. I know we're not going to make any changes, and I'm just saying as we get closer to 824, maybe we revisit how we're deploying the staff in rooms. Are we going to a 13-person room and keeping all the teachers that way? I mean,
Yeah,
I don't want you to have answers right now because I think it's going to change.
Yeah, we're having those conversations. So we have some contingency plans based on where our numbers might wind up. And so we're deploying at least one teacher at every grade level at the elementary, so kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and PK as well, to an online teacher. And so we are migrating some teachers already to online, because those numbers in enrollment include our required remote learning students. And we have enough where we're doing at least one section, and principals correct me if I'm wrong, but we have at least one second, Allison. We have at least one section PK through 5, K5. We have a PK teacher that's going to be teaching some special education online, special education students. So we have some contingency plans in place based on final kindergarten numbers. Yep.
Any other questions on that? I have a question. So you think that the numbers are down because people aren't enrolling, or do you think it's just that maybe people aren't moving more so because of everything that's happening? Now, I mean, I don't feel like from the preschool that I know that they were holding their kids. I'm just wondering if people aren't actually moving cities because of the unknown.
No, so what I think I know is that, number one, we have some people who are homeschooling. And by way of reminder, in Iowa, you can tell a local school district around that if you want some help with competent private instruction. But if you do independent private instruction, you have no burden now under state law to notify a school district. We have some parents that are notifying us, and we're sending those requests through Rodney Martinez, our homeschool coordinator. So we are seeing some families that do that, and they say probably just for this year, but we'll take stock through the year and then next year to see. Perhaps we'll come back, but they think that's the right choice for them this year, and I reach out to all of them. And the one thing I'm consistent with all of our homeschool parents that are making that choice this year is that you're always welcome back at any time. And so I call every single set of parents or individual parent or guardian, and because we have some guardian situations as well, and so you're always welcome back. And just to make sure they're aware of the required remote learning option as well. And then the other thing that is going on that I'm hearing from other superintendents, other districts, in my just network of educators, is that some parents are waiting to start their kindergartners this year. They're going to wait and start them next year. So I have a relative, that's one thing they're doing this year is they could start their child as a kindergartner, but they're going to wait until next year. And so I think we have some of that going on as well. Well, I know we have some of that going on.
198 now, our first grade could see a large jump next year. based on if people are homeschooling or sending,
So we could, yes, we could see a larger kindergarten class next year we could, I don't know. We could, based on the lower numbers this year lower than we were anticipating.
and then potentially higher first grade numbers for next year, based on kids, if they're homeschooling fifth grade and things calm down, they want to send them in first grade, so.
Yeah, we'll potentially have 2 bubble classes, a small bubble class and a big bubble class. Other questions? Very good.
Okay. Kate, a road construction update for 80th Street.
Is this working? Yeah. In all this, we've got some good news to report. We reached out to the Warren County engineer, Mr. David Carroll, and also the contractor, Elder Corporation, that's working on the paving project of 80th, and that is going to be available for local traffic, and they're going to include the school in local traffic the week of the 17th, so that will be available for the school district to utilize when school starts. So, very good news.
Okay, DT, return to learn and other COVID-19 updates.
There is a sheet in front of you, and there are copies over by Jake. And I apologize if there's any typos or mistakes on this document. This was updated, I think the last item I updated around 5:23 this evening. And so what we know at this time is we have 3,261 students enrolled PK-12. Kindergartners, we have 198. Our COVID-19 statistics, and so this is something I pay attention to every day in a couple different areas. One is the positivity rate. That's come down from the state as one measure we have to look at. This has been coming down. When they first rolled that out, we were at about a 9% positivity rate. We're now at a 6%. And that was as of 4:03 p.m. on August 10th. Polk County positivity rate is at 9%, and that was as of 4:04 p.m. today. Warren County positive cases, we're at 466, and that's from March 2nd through today at 4:06 p.m. Polk County is at 10,330, and that's again through March 2nd through today at 4:07 p.m. Warren County deaths to date, we've had 1 reported COVID-19 death. Again, March 2nd through August 10th. And Polk County positive, there's my mistake. That is deaths is 207 from March 2nd through today at 4:20. Our required remote learning parent requests as of 4:51 p.m. today are 380, and you see the breakdown, Oviatt 57, Orchard Hills, and for those watching online, if you're not familiar with required remote learning, that's our online program. Parents can choose that. They could have, by August 1st, they could tell us if they wanted that voluntarily or for medical reasons. Oviatt 57, Orchard Hills 56, Lakewood 70, Middle School 68, Eastview 53, Norwalk High School 76, again, for a total of 380. I'm not going to read all of these off, but these were, the last response I received today was at 5:23 p.m. And I apologize for some of the choppiness of this, because some of them came in email, some of them came in text messages. But you can see some of the different learning models that are being implemented by different districts. And these were the people that responded to me. And this is all, by the way, subject to change. This is what we know as of today. And some districts are choosing tonight. Some districts have board meetings next Monday. Some districts will have special board meetings between now and the start of the school year. Some districts might have granted that authority to their superintendent. And so most return to learn plans have different learning models that they can go to based on different metrics. As you're aware, reading the news, Urbandale right now has continued with an online program for their year-round school. And that's in contradiction to the state of Iowa guidance that they should come back in person. So the argument over there is going to be whether or not those hours count as instructional hours. And I know that the Urbandale district met with state representatives, I believe it was representatives from the governor's office, if not the governor herself, DE and Iowa Department of Education, Iowa Department of Public Health staff members. Des Moines Schools had similar type of meetings. And then the Waukee School District has come out and said they're going to create their own matrix to follow. So there is some pushback occurring between districts and the state. Des Moines, I believe, they've released their plan, but they have not approved that, is my understanding. Indianola has one classroom that's been impacted by COVID-19, so they are quarantining that classroom at their year-round. I believe it's Wilder Elementary School. And so there, you can see through this, there is no common model that's been picked by all districts. So it really depends on the district you're in, the county you're in, the metrics that are being looked at, and then the local decision-making of local boards. So there's some hybrid models out there. There is fully back in person with, I think every district is offering the online option voluntarily. I may not have noted that in here, but I think that's common throughout the metro. I also included the Warren County schools who responded. I think I got everybody in there that, I think maybe the only one I'm missing is I-35, who has a portion of their district in Warren County, but it's primarily in, I believe, Madison County or the county south of Madison. And then one reason you may ask, why do you include Polk in the statistics? Well, one recommendation we have is to pay attention to the districts, the counties that you're in as a district. We're only in Warren County, but we have students that have a primary or secondary residence in other counties. And so if you look at the last page, page 3, you can see that our largest representation is in Polk County, 171 students. That's about 5% of our student population that either live in Polk County full-time or are there as a secondary residence. And then you can see there's some singletons, whether it's other counties in Iowa or other states. We also have 14 in Dallas County, Madison 13. So those are our primary counties that we have some other students that attend. The numbers aren't high enough to justify really looking at Dallas and Madison. But Polk County is something we do need to pay attention to. And as we know, we have a lot of citizens and parents who travel up to Polk County every day to work. And so that's something for the board to consider. Questions about that information or any other return to learn? We have this on the agenda later, and so we'll have time to talk about our learning model and other tweaks to the return to learn plan later on the agenda as well.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes.
Under Dallas Center Grimes, what's that Edmonton 1-year online? Is that an online school program?
Yeah, so Edmentum is, and Mr. Basinger might be a little more familiar with this, but it is an online program that several school districts use, and so it's got an online curriculum.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been doing that for some of our students, like some of our at-risk students and other students that use Edmentum.
Edmonton, okay.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And so if they choose that, they go online for a year. If they go online for just the semester option, then that's with DCG teachers.
Okay, got it.
Is there any more releases from the Department of Ed or the governors? I mean, do we have any more dates for which we'll receive any more guidance from any of our elected or
Yeah, so the last guidance that came out was on the 30th. So the return to learn, reopening Iowa schools safely and responsibly. We don't have any additional formal guidance. It's more of just FAQs. There have been some webinars from the DE. Don has participated. I participated in those. Eric. Those have later here as we approach the school year, they've focused more on social emotional health and on special education. But we did have one that was more specifically about this. But so now it's just more clarifying FAQ type documents. And one issue that is coming up is limited home rule for school districts. And during this pandemic, what does that truly mean? Do we limited home rule give schools certain authority where they can take basically the Department of Ed's guidance as that guidance or other state agencies, and we can make our own interpretations and say this is what we're going to do. So there's a pushback right now on where that line is, and between the governor's office, it may go to the court system, but that's one item that's bouncing back and forth right now.
Any other questions for DT on that update? If not, we'll move to old business and under construction projects. Kate, do you want to walk us through the change orders and final acceptances?
We did have an opportunity to discuss those change orders with regard to one that's a residual from the secondary renovation project, as well as the Oviatt on Friday morning. And most of these are items that have already been placed before the board at previous meetings. We're just doing the actual contract change order, except for the lighting over at Oviatt. We have addressed that at the school board, adding the exterior lighting. And the board gave me authority up to $10,000 to improve lighting on the north side of that campus. So again, we've reviewed these at the subcommittee level, and I believe all of these have met their approval, so.
And do we need to do these in the middle school, high school?
You
That's
know-
one motion and Oviatt's a second.
Mary Beth, I think you're fine. They're all related under the 17 issue, so if somebody wants to entertain a motion to accept all of them, that would be acceptable, I believe.
Are there questions for Kate or any on these change orders? Okay.
I'm assuming without Brian and David giving us a no, that you guys are okay with all this from the subcommittee work?
Yep, we talked about it at length on Friday morning.
All right, then I'll make a motion to approve the middle school, high school renovation change order 1, bid package 9-5, and the final acceptance and completion for bid packages 3-1, 5-1, 9-2, and 9-4. For Oviatt renovations, change order 1, bid package 3-1, change order 2, bid package 16-1.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That carries. The renovations for middle school, high school, and Oviatt renovations have been approved. Then, Kate, do you want to go through the summary of all construction projects?
Yes. With that, you can see there we're narrowing down, very gratefully narrowing down here on the 2017 projects that we embarked on. And you can see there when you bring that up, we do have a surplus of roughly around 1.5 million that remains from that. These projects have had some ups and downs as we've moved through with the funding on those. Primarily, it was all owner-directed items, though, that we increased and expanded the scope of these projects. But we do have a nice piece that we have left over, and to bring to the attention to the public and those listening that that's what's going to fund the middle school baseball, softball, diamond paving project. And we will not exhaust that entire residual, but that is what's covering this. Do want to bring to the board's attention and just reminder that we opted not to use construction money to do many of the furnishings at our renovations projects, both at the middle school as well as Oviatt, middle school, high school, and Oviatt. We elected to do that with other funding sources out of the general fund to help conserve construction money for the district. So with that, that's how we ended up with a good surplus in those projects.
So Kate, a clarifying question on page 1, down for the grand total for all categories in the balance remaining, somewhat would be considered surplus, 722,000.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing where I'm seeing on that one? Is that part included in the 1.5 surplus?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Very good point. That's really all I had to share on that. Again, I do want to continue to extend thanks to the team in my office that works with a lot of details with these budgets, and both Jake and Carla Geyer, they do a lot to make sure that we're balancing back on these projects. So I appreciate that, as well as Story's work here on this. I don't have anything else to add to that. Yes?
I had one question on
Yeah.
commissioning on Oviatt. I sent you an email, but I don't know if you had time to dig into that.
I did look at that. We had, Director Roush had emailed with regard to the commissioning services that are being done. That was a new service that we introduced for the 2017 projects, where we're hiring an outside engineering firm to actually monitor and review the installation of all of our heating and cooling equipment. And those services have been done for the secondary as well as the new Orchard Hills building, but they're not yet completed at Orchard Hills. And we're working with the engineering firm on that. They're going to complete those services, but they've had some staffing changes here in the past year that's caused that to go a little bit longer than we anticipated. But they have assured us that they will do that service for us.
It'd be good, well, it would have been good to get them in there and do, finding issues before school starts back.
Yeah,
up.
that's true. I do know they've done preliminary inspections, Brian, but they have not issued the report. And thank you for that reminding of that. I reached back out to Story today. So we should have that here. I'm going to see that we can have that done here before the end of August. Okay? DT and Mary Beth, I have nothing else to share then.
All right, well, Kate, you are still on for the middle
Oh,
school
well, on
ball
this.
field paving update.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. As we said, with the residual from the secondary projects, we're moving forward finally, I think, to the OL Welcome project in Norwalk that's been identified for well over 15 years, and that's the paving of the Ball Diamond Road down south of the middle school. And the board can see here, we've been working with Bishop Engineering for a long period of time on this, but we'll be doing the first leg of that paving project from Cherry back to the back behind the middle school, there at a juncture point where we'll have a parking lot to the north and then some parking to the south there where you currently have gravel parking. And again, we're very pleased to have this project. I talked with Bishop Engineering just briefly about 45 minutes ago. The engineer would have liked to have joined us this evening, but nothing's really changed on this project as we've seen this move forward over the past several years. But it was approved by the city tonight, so that's why we were deferring our full approval, President Wright, until a special meeting on the 17th, if we could actually approve this project. And the reason we need a special meeting to approve this is it's not unique, but we're trying to get this project done this fall before weather would turn bad, and every week becomes more valuable to us. So we appreciate the board's consideration on looking at this item on Monday the 17th. The other item, in addition to setting that special board meeting, I would like the board to go ahead and approve the agreement with Bishop Engineering for providing the professional services to actually design and take this project to bid for us. So both of the capital projects members, both Director Roush and Director Albrecht, reviewed this again on Friday. I don't know if they have any other comments they'd like to make. I should probably before to note the project has increased some since you saw it. It was around 680,000 or shy 700,000. You can see it's grown to 880,000, but those were all initiatives that we have agreed to. One of them is lighting, introducing lighting to that area. Currently, there's no, very little pole lighting or driveway lighting on that parking or on that gravel drive. So we thought this was a good opportune time to put in regular street lighting down there that will help not just drivers, but also security and other reasons down there on the campus. And then the other item, we realized there was a lot of fencing down there that had become in poor condition, and also some of it was going to have to be removed and replaced to accommodate the paving project. So at this point, we decided that it was a good time to go ahead and replace quite a bit of that fencing. Richard Sleeth and Al Lammers met and discussed the fencing layout, and so that was an additional about $25,000, a short $25,000, and then the lighting was about another $80,000 we added to the project. So again, the committee felt those were good items to enhance this project.
Kate, I meant to ask on Friday and didn't get it talked about, but did the extra space get added kind of down there by the baseball fields as far as the being able to back up? I didn't know if those are new design plans. And then secondly, I know we had some questions on the ability for buses to turn around in that parking lot, if they were going to add a little bit of some space on the curb sets there.
I'm sorry, your last question?
So two questions. One was the additional space by the baseball fields for cars, and then the second one was the ability for buses to turn around in that parking lot behind the middle school building. We thought that they were going to add, I thought that they were going to add
Yeah.
some space to the curbs and things.
I don't, honestly, in the plan that was sent on Friday, and again, I wanted to get some plans in here, I'm not seeing the, as you can see, we're not seeing the turnaround at the end of the parking drive, just directly adjacent to the ball diamond. So I'll follow up with the engineer on that. I do know he did expand the lanes in the middle school parking lot, so the bus could make a loop up through that. But yes, I do need to follow up with regard to the turnaround point down there in that small parking lot to the north of the ball diamond.
Thanks.
Kate, are they going to leave some of the gravel and stuff from the existing road there for places to park? I mean, traditionally, when you go down to softball and baseball games, you've got people kind of parked, well, anywhere from the road to the tennis courts now, but you're moving the road to the north. And now we have a state championship baseball team. I'm sure the demand will grow next summer, but are we just going to try to put grass there and everybody will just park on it like they do anyways?
Well, the fencing, I heard Mr. Roush say, that's going to control some of the parking. So we are installing fencing to help, but we are holding the fencing back so there could be potentially some parking on a grassy area, but not necessarily as disorganized as you might see it now, I guess, when you're talking about a highly attended game. The other thing, this project is going to include a 5-foot wide sidewalk coming down from the west side middle school parking. So that will be pretty much used as overflow parking instead of some haphazard parking right now in the detention pond areas and other areas. So fencing will curb or stop quite a bit of that. But we did do what we call a drive-off curb or a slanted curb so that there can be some pull-off along that drive and parking along there in addition to the designated parking lots. So quantity-wise, it's really hard to say, Justin. I think that's a very good question. I've never went down there on a big night that we would have had just a couple weeks ago and counted the number of cars in relationship to what we're going to offer here. But between that, the new parking lot, the pull-off on the drive, as well as the middle school, we should have sufficient parking down there for most of our events. Definitely far more than the football we get on a football night. So does that hopefully answer your question?
Yeah, it's a trade-off, right? You'll have how many nights where you have baseball and softball there?
Yeah.
The total
Yeah.
year versus other times people will choose to park down there besides, 4th of July parade perhaps. Outside of that, just was curious because,
Yeah.
when you go down there, you do see cars everywhere from in the grass to behind the middle school to in the grass over there too, and just kind of wherever people put it in park sometimes.
With this tonight, the board would need to acknowledge if they have any questions, or obviously if they have any questions, we'll try to address those, in which David did on the turnaround there down in the little shunt parking lot. I'll need to address that. But other than that, just the approval of the agreement with Bishop Engineering.
Okay. So, yeah, we do need a motion to approve the agreement with Bishop Engineering.
I'll make a motion to approve the civil engineering agreement with Bishop Engineering for the middle school ball field paving up project.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So then, we're setting the special meeting, as long as no one has conflicts, right, next Monday, August 17th at 6. Did everybody see that email from Kate? And it was okay with that?
Yeah, I can't come until later, so unless there's another 2 board members that can't, you don't get a quorum.
Right.
But I only responded for myself per the policy rules back to Kate on that.
Were you available?
I'm available.
And it's virtual, so that'll make, if you
Yeah,
can call
it
in.
will be virtual, if that helps.
Yes, I'm aware of that. Thank you, but no, it does not.
Okay.
Okay.
For this particular night.
Okay. And David, are you available? Okay, okay. I mean, if we moved it to 6:30, does that help you, Justin, or not?
If it was 6:30 Pacific time, yes, it would help
Oh,
me.
never mind. Okay, you're not going to even be near. Okay, got it. Okay, we'll have it on next Monday at 6 o'clock. Okay, now the next item is the return to learn plan changes.
So the changes I would draw your attention to in the plan, we received an update from Warren County Health Services. And in that, just clear guidance around cloth face masks being the preferred face covering for students and staff. And so that was guidance we didn't necessarily have as we were going through this process, but they've come out and said, based on CDC, Iowa Department of Public Health guidance, the recommendation is that your default face coverings are cloth face coverings, face masks, because they help to prevent the spread of the virus. And the face shields are more about an individual person not being able to get it. And so that is the recommendation for Warren County Health Services. So the change in there, and I think there were 5 different places where I put this in the plan. On page 2, page 2, in the introduction, just mentioning again, it just says this cloth face masks are the default expectation. And so that would be on page 2, on page 10, under section 2.5.4 transportation. This is not changing the medical or religious exemptions. And then we do have some exemptions that can flow through me. We have some, say, special needs students and some others that may have a need to wear a different type of face covering. Those requests will come to me. And then 3.4, personal protective and hygiene measures, that's on page 15. And then the final change is masks and face shields, 3.8. Again, cloth face masks are the default expectation.
So on the waiver for that, DT, parents are to reach out to you about the exemption for face coverings.
Yes, so there will be information that goes out tomorrow. We've received a document from Allers that has the appropriate legal language in it. Most schools, well, I shouldn't say most schools. I know several schools are using the same document or a variation of it. And then there will be some communication based on tonight's board meeting about what the cloth face mask default expectation that the board passes that, and then where to go to get the waiver form. And that waiver form covers, you can either register through that for a religious or a medical exemption. And it's some other requirements. I think it takes a notary signature for the religious, and for the medical, it takes a note from a licensed medical professional.
And then I'm assuming each building will have that list on hand or be...
Yeah, similar to what we've done for required remote learning. I'll have a master list, and that won't be shared with every building. But then the relevant information per building is shared. And then anybody district-wide that would need to have access to that, if they have an educational interest, we'll be able to share that with them.
And DT, were we purchasing the face shields, though, too, for staff?
So yes, we have purchased 600 face shields, and we have, originally we had at least 2,000 disposable masks. We have people that are donating cloth face masks, and we are purchasing, I believe it's an extra 2,000 cloth face masks as well. And so we have that information. I think today during executive cabinet in the afternoon, we inquired with Richard Sleeth about the status of the cloth face masks. So I should know more by tomorrow, the status of those cloth face masks. We ask everybody to provide their own cloth face mask, but if they can't, then we will provide them with one. We'll have extras in case somebody forgets theirs on buses and at school. So we're prepared for that.
So then I guess my question is, so what are we going to, are they going to be able to use the face shields at all, or would they have to have both on? Correct, if they did want to use a face shield?
So what I will work with as the building principals is either waivers for particular scenarios Like for younger kids, we have some concerns about like being able to see a teacher's, mouth. So we'll work together on that. So it might be a scenario where we grant, you don't have to wear a cloth face mask, or there might be individual students that they have an issue where they can't wear the mask, but they can wear a face shield. And so we'll go with potentially some alternate face covering. But the default is, and that's what we're putting in the plan, requesting you to approve tonight, the default is without any waiver or anything else that's in place, wear a cloth face mask.
Would any piece of cloth work as a face mask, like a bandana or like a shirt covering your face, or does it have to be a face mask?
Yeah, we'll work with our nurses to get out the specifics, like a bandana, probably not, just because it's supposed to fit snugly on your face, and bandanas oftentimes are open on the bottom. So we'll get some additional information out about that, yep.
And in your piece from Allers, does it address, say, conflicts with freedom of speech in terms of dress code or any form of discrimination or infringement upon civil liberties of what could be on a particular face mask or covering?
I'll read that off. Let me just bring that up real quick. So when Allers has stated that we can require face coverings / face masks. And under the religious exemption, there'll be a check mark or an X. And of course, this is related to the student. So it's like, Sam Smith qualifies because such requirements conflict with genuine and sincere religious belief, conflict with a genuine and sincere religious belief held by the person, which is in fact religious and not based merely on philosophical, scientific, moral, personal, or medical opposition to face coverings. And then the other item, which is listed first, is Sam Smith qualifies because in the opinion of an Iowa licensed physician, MD or DO, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant, such requirements are medically contraindicated as masks would be injurious to the health and well-being of the person. The district may ask for additional medical documentation to verify the person's health condition and its impact to face covering requirements, as well as to assess possible modifications to such requirements. And so on this one, I'm sorry, we don't actually ask. I may ask for additional documentation, but for medical exemption, it asks for Iowa licensed physician, MD, DO, NP, PA signature, and then their license number.
I'm not sure. Maybe I'll ask the question slightly different because I don't think I was on the same path as DT, and I apologize. So, for example, I'm wearing a mask today, and if I had a symbol, a writing, some sort of propaganda, whether of any sort on this besides just block or a Norwalk one like you have.
Yeah. We would treat it like a piece of clothing, and so if you come in and have something that says like do drugs. Right, like no, you don't get to wear that. Just like a T-shirt. And so, if we believe that a piece of clothing violates our policies and more specifically causes a substantial disruption to our educational environment, then we can ask that piece of clothing to be removed. And again, we have face coverings, face masks that we can provide for students that might have an issue with something written on their face covering. They do not shed their First Amendment rights on a face covering, right?
Yeah.
So just like a T-shirt and some other things.
So then from maybe the policy subcommittee is do we need to add face coverings into whatever policy that is about offensive or?
Yeah, I'll double check on that, but my initial take is no, because that is a piece of clothing that's being worn. And so our dress code really covers clothing, T-shirts, jeans, so on and so forth. So I don't think we'll need additional policy language. We can check on that. Yep. So I would just ask for approval of those changes to the Return to Learn plan.
Are there further questions from anyone on those changes? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the return to learn plan changes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the return to learn plan changes have been approved. And then we have the waiving of the service hours requirement.
Yes, so the document attached to the agenda, and Mr. Basinger, if you want to come up front in case there's any questions. Similar to what we did in the spring, this is a local decision, so we don't need any state approval for this. The service hours is a local graduation requirement, which is left up to local districts. And so the recommendation based on some of the challenges around COVID-19 is to waive the service learning provision under Board Policy Regulation 603.13R1. So Mr. Basinger, do you have what other additional information do you have about this?
Well, just that, service opportunities have been limited this summer. Typically, our students do their service the summer before school starts, so we don't want to hold that against them. We think it'll be a little bit challenging to actually go out and do some things. Other students are finding opportunities, and we want to be able to recognize them if we can, but we know it'll be a challenge for some students, and we don't want to put them in a situation that they would be uncomfortable with or feel unsafe. So we know everybody has had the opportunity to help somebody out during this time, so we just want to ask them to write a reflection on how they've assisted people during the pandemic.
Are there questions for Chris?
But remind me, Chris, this is just for the total service hours for their portfolio, or just for, do they do it each year? They have to meet the criteria?
Each year they have to meet the criteria, so this would be for this year's 11 hours-ish.
We ever consider for those that are not graduating, adding that, over the course of 1 to 2 other years? Because I know we made some exemptions in the spring on circumstances on this, but that portfolio and that project itself is essentially the capstone, right, of their career at Norwalk.
Mm-hmm.
And by, say, kind of allowing some to not make as much effort versus others that will find a way to get it done. I think that's what we embody the students, to be able to work through adversity. I'm not opposed to it because I understand the situation, and a lot of the things that these kids would be doing are either with people or helping people directly without social distancing. But I think there is a lot of things that they could go be of service into the communities to fulfill that requirement. And I think it is a very important part that they fulfill that, and their whole portfolio, the whole process, because that's what's been built up from essentially middle school through their capstone of their senior year.
I guess I don't disagree, but I don't want to hold the pandemic against anybody. So we count those service hours each year, so it's pretty easy just to do it year by year. But my recommendation is just that we get rid of the requirement for this year.
Other questions? So hearing none, we would need a motion to approve waiving the service hour requirements for this academic year, coming academic year.
I will make a motion to waive the service hours requirements as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
All right, waiving the service hours requirement is approved 4-1. and learning model. DT, is that you?
Yes. So as the governor of the Department of Ed and Iowa Department of Public Health put out their guidance, there were a lot of schools that were scrambling, others that just looked at how does this cause us to pivot at all. And so again, looking at that guidance, we have 4 levels of community transmission. And so we have none to minimal, 0 to 5% positivity in county on average over the past 14 days. And there are a list of suggested strategies and a suggested return to learn model. So under that first area, it's on-site learning following Department of Ed, Iowa Department of Public Health, CDC guidance. Hybrid learning is necessary based on parent or guardian preference and student quarantine. And you'll see that type of recommendation common throughout each of the return to learn models. Minimal to moderate, which is where we would be at now and where we found ourselves when this guidance came out. And so the first time we got the positivity rate, I believe, was on Friday the 31st from Warren County. So 6 to 14% positivity in a county on average over the past 14 days. So suggested strategies. Continue, again, these are suggestions, not requirements. So continue above strategies, reduce group events, gatherings, limit interschool interactions, and ensure student and staff groupings cohorts are as static as possible, and that interactions among groups of students and staff are limited. So we had an executive cabinet and principals meeting on Friday the 31st, and we discussed this. And one item that came out of that meeting was based on the new metrics that the board had not seen when we took action on the return to learn plan and the learning model on July 23rd. So that group, which is our return to learn planning team, we asked the board to consider, should we go with a hybrid model? Now, that is, again, one of the return to learn models that's possible for the board to implement through our return to learn plan and through the Department of Ed. Also, at the 6th through 12th grade level, which is what the principals and executive cabinet are asking the board to consider, is at the secondary campus, it is harder to maintain those static groups with our scheduling and the way we're going through our days. And so there is a thought process as we go through this based on, again, the minimal to moderate. Now, we might be in a different place when we hit next week, when we hit August 24th, and this is the challenge with this return to learn plan and what the challenge is before boards. Because you can make one decision and the dynamics can change and you might need to make a different decision. And so I wanted to bring this back before the board to consider where you want to stay with a fully in-person, no change recommended to the voluntary and medical required remote learning, is the change in guidance from the state, the metrics that came down that we didn't have previously, and then looking at kind of what we know from the number of voluntary requests we had. And again, on the 31st, we were pretty clear on what was going to happen. We still had one more day before the deadline hit for the required remote learning. And all of our principals are here. Our executive cabinet, specifically Don with teaching and learning, Allison with HR. Eric Neeson is available through phone. He's home with family. He's got a health issue right now. But what questions does the board have? What information do you need to make this, again, principled and informed decision?
So I looked at, so we were 8 or 9% just a week or two ago, right? And now we're down to 6%. So my fear is that we make this change in a week to 2, like to go to hybrid, and a week to 2 weeks, we're back down to like 4 or 5%. So with it changing so much, I mean, if we leave it as it is, but if we go hybrid, then I think we need to consider it, making it for a specific amount of time and that we can't change our mind from now until when school starts. Because going hybrid, I feel like there's a lot of parents and a lot of planning that has to go behind that. And if we keep flipping, it's going to potentially cause issues. So I guess I'm just the thought on like, do we need to do it tonight or do we wait? I mean, I guess I don't know what feedback's coming back from the community and when they want to know. And does it make sense to do it tonight or wait one more week to see if our numbers are going down? And then, I guess it's so hard because I know it's fluid, but I don't want to change now and then in 2 weeks say, or a week and a half say, oh, we're at 4%, we should go back full time, because I think that's going to throw a lot of the parents' planning off.
Yeah, and I, I think the challenge with the metrics that came down is it's focused on 1 to 2 metrics, because going up to the next level would be the substantial controlled, which is 15 to 20% positivity rate in a county on average over the past 14 days, and 10% absenteeism among just students. And so this is where you're getting some pushback from districts, is should there be multiple metrics used, like absence rate for your students and staff, because we know that that's what I would say is a gap in this plan, is what about your staff? Like, that's not mentioned in here around absenteeism. And then should it also pay attention to maybe the number in your district, number of COVID-19, say, positive cases? And so these are the metrics that have come down from the state as what we're supposed to be using. Substantially uncontrolled is greater than 20% positivity in a county on an average over the past 14 days with healthcare resource capacity concerns. And when you get to I would call them tier 3 and tier 4, substantial controlled and substantial uncontrolled, that's when you can apply to the state to go to fully online, right? Hybrid model, the board has control over when you might transition to hybrid, so that's truly a local decision. And again, we have our principals here and representatives from the executive cabinet. If anybody wants to add, if I am missing anything, I would encourage you to speak up now based on our conversations. Director Roush?
Yeah, so 2 questions. There's a gap between 5 and 6%, so what happens when it's 5.5%?
So that would be another thing that I noticed, yes. We go from 0 to 5%, and then it's 5 to 6. So do you round up? Do you round down? That's a great question. 14 to 15%, right? But then we have 15 to 20% and then greater than 20%. One thing I would suggest, and we'll get clarification from the DE, is based on the one guidance they did is greater than 20%. So I would say probably you have to get the 15% to be in substantial controlled, and you have to get the 6% to be in community transmission. But we'll get some guidance on that.
Which, that's kind of nitpicky and not super important. But, so I want to understand if this is the metric that we want to be paying most attention to, or should we be looking at that in conjunction with total positive cases? Because the positive cases is just % positive versus % tested. So we've got 100, people getting tested each day, and 6 are positive. There's our 6%. Clark County might have 10 people tested positive and 8, or even 3, so they're 30%. So it just doesn't seem the positivity rate doesn't seem to tell the whole story in my mind.
Yeah, I would say that's part of the challenge with this guidance, and that's why I provided you with numbers for Warren County and for Polk County. Our positivity rate in Warren County, when we first started looking at this, was 9.06%. Next day it went down to 8.98%. Then it was weekend. Didn't get data from Warren County Health Services over that. So the next time it was 8.908%. And then it went down to the last time I started counting, because now Warren County is not sending out that information because it's coming from the state, was 8.199%. And that was the 3rd of August through the 21st of July. So in positivity rate, we've seen the numbers going down. When you look at the Department of Public Health website and look at the numbers, what does the trend line look like? And that's where, again, I provide the information about what do we look like from a positivity, and I can bring that up in a second. So if there's another question, ask that now, and I'll find that information. So I think you're wise in asking, should there be other metrics we look at? I think, again, in the return to learn plan draft, report, the memo that I provided tonight, we have, COVID-19 deaths, Polk County and Warren County. We have, positive cases, Polk County, Warren County. Positivity rate in Polk is 9%, Warren County it's 6%. And so we're in a tough situation because we're sandwiched in between really Polk and Warren County. And so we have the dynamics of both counties really impacting us.
It just seems like an important thing to decide as a board how we want to approach this, and because it really comes down to, how parents can plan. I don't want to be switching up in person versus online, twice a week or however often it may be. It's a 14-day rolling average, which is good, so it kind of smooths out those bumps a little bit. But if parents can know, hey, I can watch the 14-day rolling average, if it gets to 15%, like the state says, then you actually have to switch to hybrid learning. I understand, is that right?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So if the 15 or 14-day rolling average of positivity reaches 15%, that's when the state's recommending that you switch to hybrid learning.
It's actually, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Yeah, let me get down there. Hybrid learning is necessary based on, yes, that would be correct, is when the state is saying, and that's basically, that hybrid model is some in-person, some remote learning, and it doesn't say that in here, but what that allows you to do is a better opportunity to social distance students,
Yep.
right? So looking at the data from Warren County, and so in terms of positive cases, we kind of trended up until about June 12th or 13th, and then the trend line started to go down until about June 25th, and then the trend line started to go back up. And since about July 30th, we have been trending down again. And this is the number of positive cases. And so I think that data can inform the board about which route you may want to go.
Some of the conversations that secondary principals have had, Beth and Jody and Chris, have to do a little bit with the, if you look at some of the CDC and some of the research that's come out, children 10 and over are usually the ones that can be the ones that are spreading it. So in order to sort of mitigate that, then the conversation became, how do we do that in the context of having 26, 28 kids in a classroom? Because the ability to social distance and kids moving from room to room, and when you start adding all that together, our ability to contact trace and also then actually mitigate those in those classrooms becomes minimal. So along with the metrics that we have here, some of those other things are really important too, especially if children 10 and older are the ones that could be transmitting this more, then how do we address that from a secondary level? So Jody, Beth, and Chris, if you have any more to add to that, that would add on to that, those are some of the conversations we've had to have that conversation about how do we mitigate that and protect everybody's health.
And is it class to class, or the passing periods, or common period? I mean, when you're kind of saying your transmission risk, because, another question that's been brought to my attention, and one I have as my own, is, if I have a child that's only going to school every other day, but yet he goes to activities at night with 100 and plus of his closest teammates or fellow activity members, what's static about that if they're still exposed in the same short range there, right? I mean, and we can't control what any of these kids do once they're outside of the campus. Same question at colleges, right? You can get them in there, you can kind of keep them under wraps and control where they're going and who they're talking with and how we're passing through the halls. But then once that bell rings, we've lost, kind of control for 15 hours, and then we start this process over again.
I guess one of the concerns that I have is that First of all, we have pretty small classrooms, 650 square feet to 750 square feet, and some of those have 28, 29, 30 kids in the rooms. The other concern I have is we have a lot of classrooms with tables, similar probably in length to the ones you were sitting at, and we're going to have to at least pair up on those tables. So kids are not going to be 6 feet apart in the classrooms. I know we can't control what kids are doing outside of school, but at least we're potentially not putting them right next to somebody with COVID while they're here. Now, I think the activities are, while they are struggling with exactly what you said, they're all coming together. I do think that they are putting things into play to try to keep kids in cohort groups while they're practicing too. So, I don't know. I just have a concern that we will not be able to social distance when we're here with all kids in the building.
My concern is a repeat of Chris's in our inability to keep any kind of distance, and then all the passing periods that we have and how crowded the halls are during those passing periods. And because we have a common bell schedule, because we share kids and we share teachers, it's not that we can just release 8th graders to go to class, their next class, because then they're to a class where there's no place for them to go. And it's only half of them, because we have 8th graders in with 9th graders. We have 9th graders in with 10th graders, so it becomes hard to stagger those dismissals. My other concern is in regards to our staff members. We have concerns from several staff members about the Return to Learn plan. They're greatly appreciative of your work and your passing of the mask wearing or face coverings. That was taken very well, but the concern of social distancing still remains for the adults. And if we have one of those highly qualified teachers become sick and have to be out for 2 weeks or longer, it's hard to find that highly qualified sub to step in for them.
I too would echo Chris and Jody. Thank you very much for the work that you've done. And our teachers are, like Jody said, greatly appreciative of the efforts and the work that you have put forth. I know that just hearing face coverings has alleviated a big majority of the concerns, but we still have some concerns with staff members regarding class sizes and the sizes of their classrooms. They've taken stuff out of their classrooms. Classrooms now are very, I don't want to say sterile, because they are without kids. That helps to get kids back in the classrooms, and it softens them up a lot. But when you walk in and you see nothing but desks facing forward, it does have an impact on learning. Another area besides passing periods, classrooms, just overall wellness of the adults is our cafeteria also. I know that we have changed our schedules around to have 4 different lunches to help with the numbers, but that's still, we're still at capacity, and we've purchased, I know, 3 or 4? Several new lunch tables, but we are still at capacity with that. So those are just some other options that I just wanted to bring to your attention.
Just on the extracurriculars, because the guidance to me, I mean, it seems like, from what I understand, the difference between our vote 2 weeks ago and today is this guidance that came out that is in the board packet regarding a suggestion to be as static as possible. And I'm kind of interested in Justin's question there about the extracurriculars, because it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to send the kids. Now, I get Justin's point. We control the day when they're here, but we also control football. We also control marching band. I mean, those are school-based activities. So what happens to that static group, the cohort A-B piece, for school-sponsored activities? I know it's after the bell rings, but if we're going to send, unless we're having all football players in the A or the B, I struggle with that a little bit. Just curious as to how you're intending to handle some of the school-based extracurriculars.
I guess for me, it's less about keeping cohorts together and more about the ability to social distance during the day. So it's not necessarily that the purple day kids are practicing together and the gold day kids are practicing together, but it's the fact that we're only going to have half the kids in the hallways and in the classrooms on those purple days so they can sit distanced from everybody.
I know from the secondary campus standpoint, you guys were hoping that last year was the last year of all the changes and kind of curveballs thrown at you between the construction projects and now this. You know, I am always genuinely interested in hearing the input from those that are doing the work. I think the one part of this that I'm still trying to get to is I think there's a desire by our parents to get our kids back into school. And I hold belief that their best chance of education is in person with our teachers that we have hired to put in front of them. I know the computer can emulate some of that work, and in listening to Don and some of the stuff, I also believe our secondary campuses, they're talented enough and they've got a head start with Google Classrooms and the Chromebooks to kind of to do that. And I'm certainly not naive to think that at some point this year we may have to shut down, whether it be a class, a building, a school district, based on an outbreak or a positive test. But I'm trying to wrap this all around in somewhat of an impossible position from the board to say, do we bring everybody back and do that model? Do we do the hybrid? Do we do some other approach? Because unfortunately, not everybody's going to be happy with this. I think, you know, I have one question for DT, but the kind of the last question in general on this is, do we, the spacing and the part of that I completely understand, and we can't, no one's going to walk down the hallways in a straight line and not grab each other because they're kids, and we just can't keep our hands off each other walking and doing things. But even if we put forth the best effort and have stagnant groups every other day, is our risk exposure tremendously different from the fact that we can't necessarily come and clean all the time, or they meet after school, or even if we only have 750 in the building in the secondary campus versus 1,500, does that change the probability so dramatically? Other than, yes, I could sit between now and in DT in a classroom on a table versus sitting me and David, and I'm not a medical professional, not a scientist to know if my exposure rate is, I know 6 feet's the guidance. I don't know at that age what their exposure is. And I also am acutely aware that maybe it's our staffs that are greatest risk for catching this and the response to the virus, and not necessarily our kids. So we're that's where we were from our policy or from our surveys to the parents to where we are now. I'm just trying to get all the fears and concerns out there, and so we can make the best decision. My question for you, DT, is on the doctors that we have on our parent advisory council, have they given some of their risk factors for our social distancing in our secondary campus? I mean, have they heard that as a viable option in all their discussions? Because we have some very talented parents that are highly involved. Were they kind of given some of this data? Have they given a feedback to yes, no, good idea, bad idea?
So they haven't given specific data based on the guidance that's come out from the state. What they have done prior to that is help us vet the hybrid options, the AB day, and say clearly the guidance that has come out from the CDC, Iowa Department of Public Health, is if you can maintain social distancing, it helps to cut down on transmission. So we're clear on that. And then the other thing, just holistically, and this is where the board finds themselves in the tough spot, is the feedback from our parent survey was the number one preferred model was in person. The least preferred was fully online, but some people did prefer that. And then the hybrid options were also liked, and we had two different options on there. It was the AB day or the original type of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday cohort that we had, purple and gold cohort that we had talked about. And so what I would say is that we know that from guidance from Warren County Health Services, from Iowa Department of Public Health, CDC, face coverings help to cut down the transmission of COVID-19. Social distancing helps to cut down the transmission of COVID-19. We know the metrics, some of the metrics that are present in Warren County / Polk County of positivity rates in overall numbers. And so I think you have to take all that into consideration as you look at what model we should implement. And then also as Chris and Jody and Beth talk about are the local dynamics. Because if we had rooms that were 2,000 square feet, right, we could potentially social distance, we would be able to social distance larger groups of students. But since we do have some smaller classrooms that our students funnel through, and we are one campus here, right? Other districts have, 6, 7, or 6, 8 middle schools and 9, 12 high schools. So I think all that you just have to try to balance out. And what level of risk are we willing to go forward with our, our district, our community, our staff, our students, most importantly.
So talking in regard to some of the questions Brian was and Michelle were asking about, switching back and forth, because, clearly in the last few weeks we've moved on the number, and I'll be optimistic here and assume we'll be in the 0 to 5% shortly. I don't know if that happens or not, but let's say that it does. As a board member, how do I get comfortable when we just, and I heard your survey results, but really the freshest survey is 88% of the parents saying send the kids back with what we told them we were going to do 2 weeks ago was 5 days a week. So that to me is, I don't, most of our times when we get 90% or 88%, we're feeling like that was something the parents really wanted. So we get to none to minimal here, and we had the parents tell us they want 5 days a week. Are we going to flip back out of this hybrid in a week or 2 or 3? And maybe it becomes, okay, we do this for a set 1 month and we reassess. I don't know how to approach that work, but I struggle as a board member to be in the 0 to 5 and say that that's the right path.
I think Southeast Polk is a model of what you could look at in that. I believe their board, the Southeast Polk decision was to go to a hybrid model. I believe that's for 2 weeks, and what's not in here is some more detail that I believe they're going to reassess on an every 2-week period. So 2 weeks hybrid AB, then PK fullback with online option, 6/12 hybrid AB day. And what I didn't get from the information from that district is, I believe they're reassessing at the board level every 2 weeks. And Dawn lives in the Southeast Polk district, so I think she might know.
Yes, I live in the Southeast Polk district, and they had a real strong debate on exactly what they wanted to do. And what they decided on is that hybrid model, but every 2 weeks they would reassess. They would look at the data, they would bring it back to the board table, and then they would decide. And that's the message they've communicated with the community, is that we will be reassessing this every 2 weeks with the ultimate goal of getting everybody back to school. So their message was, we want everybody back in school. But what they did is they voted to come back hybrid, and then at the next board meeting 2 weeks from now, they'll make a decision if they're going to stay hybrid, or if their data looks well enough to come back to school with everybody.
So that is some parameters that you can put in there. Again, you have the ability, and I know you all know this, but I want to say it for some of our public audience that's watching, is the board has the ability to transition between the learning models, right? Hybrid, fully in person, required remote learning, that could go to everybody depending on, what the dynamics are in our local district. So you've approved that plan. Now the challenge is, which part of that plan, which contingency are you going to deploy? And it's a tough decision. And, there's some people that aren't happy that we're going full back. They would prefer a hybrid. And others that if you make this decision to go hybrid 6/12, then there will be there will be upset people, absolutely. And we've seen that play out in other districts that are making these decisions. And, the decision that's made tonight, we come Monday night, we may have to add this back to that agenda because we might have different metrics. And then the 24th, we may have to look at it again. So it's just the principals have said it, other people are saying, I know people in the community are saying it to all of our board members, thank you for your leadership, because this is just, there are no perfect solutions here right now.
The concern, though, too, I think, is if we have to change it, and I think this is what everybody's maybe saying, too, but every 2 weeks, I just worry about how families can make that adjustment quickly. I mean, some people have very flexible jobs, some don't, and that's my concern, is how quickly are they going to be able to adjust to go back to hybrid, and then we go back to, and I know we can't control that because we're at the mercy of the virus, but I just get concerned about that communication and then how they're going to be able to make those adjustments.
Yeah, and the team had very thoughtful conversations about this. Dawn's comments earlier that she reiterated from those team conversations are, when you look at some of the transmission rates for younger students,
Right.
some of the research would indicate that it's not as concerning. The symptomology, if it appears in younger students, has been less serious. The staff remains a concern at the elementary. We do have some mitigation efforts in place. We can keep those groups more static at the elementary level than at the secondary level. So all those factors we talked about in arriving at, putting this before the board. And so that also transitioning between, the models and the impact that has on families. And I think that's why you see a differentiation between K-5 and 6-12.
From a scheduling standpoint, I didn't ask this on Thursday, or maybe I didn't quite get it iterated the way I wanted to. We were expecting the schedules to essentially be the same, A and B days. Your teachers would they're either on site or they're not. And would be working to have those in rotations, so our teachers are just always here in their classroom, and yet some days they'll have kids and some days they won't? Or was it section split, so there'd always be kids in class, it'd just be a different set of 15 or whatever, 12, 10 to 20 in the class, so then you're having to juggle multimedia with the in-class kids as well.
But Don, didn't we discuss this in the instructional services where, with the Canvas and the Seesaw and the Google Classroom, that they're going to start putting more of the instruction on there so those kids that are on their off day will know what is expected of them. So the plan is supposed to continue, right? Like they're not,
Right.
A doesn't do it now and then they don't wait 2 days to do work. They're going to do work every day. So, it does put a burden on the teachers up front to get that information in there, but I'm hoping once it's in there that the kids can follow it, that knows what's expected of them if they are hybrid.
Right, you're right. I think the one thing that would happen is teachers would have to plan just a little bit differently. So instead of planning for a 45-minute period for 5 straight days in a row, they would be planning for, I'm going to plan for these face-to-face learning, but then I'm going to plan for the remote so students can have that face-to-face instruction and then have something, a task or something they have to do and check in with. So you're right, Michelle, that's what we talked about, is that it would be one of those more fluent kind of things, and it would just require a little bit different type of planning.
But the teachers feel comfortable with what they have in place to be able to do that. It's going to, like I said, it's going to be different in the beginning, and it's going to take some time to work out all the, information through it. But
There's not a great deal of comfortableness in all of this. It's hard, it's challenging, it's going to be very, very different for everyone, for the students, for the teachers, and it is going to be messy regardless of whatever the decision of the board is. It's going to be a challenging start to our school year. We know that. We already have a good percentage of families that are choosing remote, and our teachers are preparing for that and needing to prepare for that while also preparing for those kids that are going to be there in person. So it's going to be a hard start, regardless. We're just trying to make a proposal to mitigate the numbers of students that we have in the building at the start of the year.
Yeah, I think we're at a point where we're just trying to minimize risk. We're not going to, that's the best we're going to be able to do, is try to minimize risks. And I don't know if there's any one good way to do it right now, because we don't even know what we don't know. So when we start to think about it, I think Jody's right. There's not one good way for us to do this, and any way we try, there's still going to be some challenges. But I also know from working with the teachers, they're up for the challenge, and we just have to figure out how we're going to assist in making sure we can keep everybody safe as much as possible.
Okay, so I think then that goes back to whatever decision we make, we need to make it for a specific amount of time, and that we won't change it between now and school starts, because I feel like between parents and teachers, everyone has to have a plan, and if we change it between now and then, it's too much change in a short amount of time, and we need to give them the opportunity to be ready for the start of school and potentially 2 to 4 weeks after that, so they can be successful during that time, and then reevaluate, I don't know if it's end of September or what, and then hope to, change it, or unless, obviously, if our numbers increase too high and we don't have that choice, we have to pull everybody out. But I just wanted to make it so, I know they have a plan, but we can't keep changing on them and the families.
Yeah, that was my point too. I just feel like that would be a lot. And so I guess I have another question about the teachers. Planning time, and I feel like, how's that going to work when you're trying to do a hybrid model?
So what we've done this year is a little bit different. So the early out Wednesdays that we've utilized for professional learning, what we've done is we've personalized that professional learning that goes right with the PLCs. So when the PLCs are doing more planning and they're trying to do more of a remote model, we've opened up those early out Wednesdays. So in lieu of us having a lot of professional learning that we're doing and working with, we're giving that time to teachers. At the secondary campus, they also have the morning PLC meetings, and they also have they have a prep and an office. So there's a lot of planning there. I know that Chris, Beth, and Jody have excellent plans on how to do that, but we've tried to open up more time so teachers have information that they can work on. What is good, high-quality remote learning look like? How do we work in PLCs to personalize that? So we've opened up that time for them, basically.
I'm not sure my friends behind me want me to say something, but I'm going to. I would also hope that that question you just asked, Mary Beth, about planning time, we really take into consideration for your elementary teachers also. It's 2 separate types of scenarios where Don just described what we have. Elementary teachers don't necessarily have the same look that we do as far as planning goes. So I just wanted to put that out in case you had any questions about the difference between elementary and secondary planning time.
Okay, so what you're stating was just for 6 through 12 on those Wednesday early outs? That wasn't for pre-K through 12? Oh, it's everybody, okay. But you're saying because they're in class all day with kids, and it's changed a little bit, that we need to recognize the planning that needs to be done at the elementary level.
And they also they don't have that morning plan time like built into secondary when we did that schedule change. Elementary does not have that morning. They have some built in through specials throughout the day, but it's not an everyday thing. So that planning time, yes, is very important at the elementary too. And we're actually meeting tomorrow morning to have a discussion on what can this look like? What do we need to do?
Beth, on that front, I don't live in your world day in, day out, but I've thought a lot about, a teacher, and you all trying to manage and balance this. It appears to me that this approach would call for 3 groups of kids. You have the students one day and then online the next. You have the full online learners, so you have 2 groups of one day and online the next. So you're really managing 3 groups of kids. That seems a little bit harder, in a big sense. So as I think about that, and then I talk about going back and forth potentially as numbers fall or doing this for a period of time, what do you guys say to that as far as the ability to do this for 2 weeks and then say, oh, we're going to go back to full, or go full and then go 2 weeks from now, go to hybrid? That starts to get just a little daunting to me. And then my second question would be, in regard to the early out days, I know some districts are doing some more early out days. Was that something that you guys talked about or thought about, and why did you not choose to bring that recommendation today?
We've had many conversations about how to get more planning time in for our teachers because, like you just described, it's 3 groups, potentially, or 2 groups. The fully online or remote learners have different sets of tasks or assignments or ways to communicate those assignments to them than those students that are in person. So we are very much aware of the planning needs of our teachers. We have had conversations about trying to increase planning time opportunities, but we also have those requirements of 1,080 hours of contact. So trying to determine how the DE will allow us to count those hours and make sure that we have that in place for our students as well. And the way they count the hours is by the school building in the district that has the fewest number of hours. Previously, that was Oviatt as an elementary. But now that they are shifting their hours a little bit different, I don't know if that math still counts up that way because those students are being dropped off early. Their morning day is starting much earlier than it had been. And I'm not the expert on that. She's behind me.
And if you recall, one of the changes in guidance that came out was the 50% requirement, because our original hybrid plan had a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Wednesday off for planning purposes. The 50% requirement change that came out on July 30th, 30 days after we submitted our return to learn application to the DE, has had an impact on these conversations, and that's where we talked about the AB hybrid model instead.
I would like to say whatever decision is made, we are in full support. We appreciate everything that you've done and everything that you're doing. Just please know we support you, and we will go forth however it is that it is decided. I can tell you that there's not an administrator in this room right now that doesn't want kids back. We miss them. We want them. We want to teach them. We just, we're just trying to balance what's right for our adults and our kids, and as are you. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we all, whatever decision is made, we'll go with it, and we're good, and we'll work really hard.
I was going to actually, for you and all of your counterparts, give you the bad news that I'm also asking and expecting to pick up those last 50 days from last year. So we're going to have to add a little bit more learning in here.
He's going to teach them, though, so it's okay.
All right.
So we kind of joke about it, but that's the expectation, right? We had a long summer vacation, and now we've got some catching up to do.
We call it a long spring break.
It was a long spring break. We hibernated in the spring. But to Michelle, to one of your points earlier, though, and that's where I'm sitting here, is thinking about, do we really want to change to a hybrid model, because that's our back pocket approach? And do we change, even though we just met and talked about this a couple weeks ago, because we have parents that have planned. I mean, they're and I know we talked a little bit about extracurriculars, and I don't want to quite dive into that as a rationale, but that's, if you have a 7th and an 8th grader and a 9th grader that can't drive, well, if they're at home all day, I got to have a parent or somebody bring them to school if they're doing stuff, right, on the AB days, that's in my boat, but I have some flexibility at my house. But, as parents and jobs and some of that stuff, we as a board, I know there's different guidance, and there's some words in there that we're talking about here, but, we're kind of looking at, actually the numbers got a little better, and some of the stuff that we've known is still kind of in play. And so that's kind of one of those, I don't want to switch every 2 weeks. I don't want to switch every month. I want to be very cognizant that that's a big decision, not a kind of not just you personally, Michelle, but just in general, the board. That's not just something we can just flip a coin and be like, oh, if it lands on tails, we're going to hybrid. If it lands on heads, we're all in person, so.
I guess I did have a question. Indianola states that they're getting out early every day. Do they not have the typical Wednesday early out like we do?
So what Indianola has gone with is they're calling it their hybrid plan. So they offer voluntary and medical required remote learning as an option. And then they're getting out 90 minutes early every day. I think they typically get out Wednesdays 90 minutes early, but they've extended that to Monday through Friday. And they will be counting some hours for all students as required remote learners each week, essentially. And so there will be an expectation around some online learning for all students each week in Indianola. But they are doing 90-minute early outs.
So you mean they're expected to do it for that 90 minutes additional from what they're in school? I guess I'm not, maybe I didn't follow that right. I apologize.
So they have to meet the 1,080 hours. If you dismiss, students 90 minutes early every day, you don't meet that threshold unless they are learning online remotely. So they're going to have some expectations about remote learning for all their students, not just their fully remote, required remote learning students. And that's how they are getting to 1,080 hours.
Because I was trying to think of that for like planning purposes, like for us, if we're struggling with planning, is it, we only go till 3 and they gain back a half hour at the end of their day. I don't know if that's enough because there's a lot of planning, but things like that to think outside that maybe we hadn't thought of 2 weeks ago, seeing some of the other options that the schools are going for.
Yeah, I mean, it's a model that's out there. I think just the question that pops up is around the hours, right? And what feedback might you get from the Department of Ed regarding that issue? But that's how Indianola is. They're going to have expectations for their students to learn remotely, even if they're attending every day. Other questions? So then we enter that. This is an action item, and so there are multiple actions the board can take. You could table this decision. We do have a meeting next Monday. We will have, thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Basinger,
thank you.
Dr. Radigan, and Ms. Ward. You could table this until next week. You can take action tonight to reaffirm the learning plan or to go with a different learning plan. What the Return to Learn team, executive cabinet principals have asked you is to consider hybrid for 612. You could put a time limit on, say, if we went to a hybrid or just fully in person and reassess every 2 weeks. So there are multiple options. You can take no action tonight. And if there's no motion, then we will move forward with implementing the current learning plan, which is the fully back in person with the medical and voluntary required remote learning.
DT, Beth, I wanted to say the same to you. We all appreciate everything you're doing, and sadly, we're all operating in a bit of an unknown world here. So what's safe, not safe is all subjective. It's a very confusing place that everybody finds themselves. DT, if we tabled this, one of my concerns has been, and I mentioned here 2 weeks ago, what we did 2 weeks ago, and all the parents made their decision based on that information. And I know we had a town hall meeting of sorts with parents to say, here's what we're doing, and they based on that. Is there anything we can give parents? And I think people are living in a world where they're flexible more than normal. I mean, everybody has to right now, obviously. But when you start talking about a day off with my kids and a day on with my kids, that's kind of a bigger flexibility thing that has me a little concerned about flipping it today. Mm-hmm. If we took the approach to table it, I don't know, but I don't think a lot of parents are clued into this requested change yet. I learned about it on Wednesday, and I think in the people that I've talked to, I don't know how many would know, just because we haven't had the town hall sessions and some of that going on. Is an approach to say if we're in the 0 to none, we're going to be full online, if we flip up into the other piece, we're going to go to, so they can kind of have some of the guidance to plan forward just a little bit and get that word out so that they know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trigger for us in this conversation was really around the metrics that came down from the state. We're in that second tier, so does that kick into hybrid or not? And that's, a local decision. We're trying to provide data, opinions around, information around classroom size, all that. And so that's certainly a valid approach. My response to somebody that would come to me is say, we have a plan, we have these 3 different models that we can implement, and we might have to implement with little to no notice. And so that's where the contingency planning comes in. I know that certain families are doing a better job of planning for that than others. Because if we roll out and we're not fully back in person, there will be parents and students in our district that will not know that there was the option of a hybrid plan because they haven't reviewed our plan. We will have others that, yep, they're ready to go, and they'll go, and then the combination in between. And so I think the key is for us to communicate after tonight, like just to understand that with the metrics that are currently in place, the board is considering going to a hybrid plan, so you need to plan accordingly. If you provide some level of metrics that if this, then that, I'm sure some families would definitely appreciate that. If the 0 to 5 were fully back, 6 to, is it 15? 6 to 14, is that 14.99 or is that 14? We'll figure that out. I can see how that would be a good approach for the board to take as well.
I mean, we're kind of developing what our stance is as these 4 levels are here, maybe in front of ourselves, but I'm just saying if there's a table period here to kind of get that word out, that makes a little sense to me, because I hear Brian, I've left wanting for more understanding what 6 to 14 positivity rate really means versus all these other metrics. And although I look on the left side of the page, that's what the guidance is. And I've been from the beginning. I've wanted a guidance-based approach to this. I haven't wanted to stray out on our own because I'm not a doctor. But I think in the right 2 columns, you've got suggested strategies and relearn to learn model. They've allowed some local decisioning within those. I mean, it is not perfectly clear to me that hybrid learning is necessary based on parent or guardian preference. I don't really know what that means as to what we're doing here. But maybe this is where we apply a little more specificity to how our district's going to respond to those levels.
Yeah, I think, in terms of like parent preference, you look at the survey, you look at the data, your comment earlier about, we had 88% choose. Other districts, the numbers are lower in terms of choosing to go back fully online. It's lower in Waukee, it's lower in Johnston. I was getting some of those numbers come in today. And so our numbers are higher to fully come back. Likewise, our dynamic is different with one campus because none of those districts have a 612 campus. And so that's a factor we have that they don't. And we have some positives and negatives that go that way. But so going forward with those metrics, we don't have clear and concise guidance from the state. I mean, that's the dynamic we're in. We have these metrics. Once we roll out, doesn't matter. If we're going, we are being asked or required to be back in person by the state. If we want to follow their guidance, if we don't, and say we go fully online, we would be in direct violation of the guidance from the state. I don't sense that from the board that we want to go and be in conflict with the state at this particular time. And so if that's the case, then we follow the guidance. What are our metrics locally? Because we do have some flexibility over that. And how often do we check back in? And so we have this proposal today. When it was made, the metrics were different than what they are today. And that's part of the challenge, right? If we were having our conversation today with the executive cabinet principals, probably wind up in the same place, but it might be a bit different in terms of that conversation because the data has shifted. So, principal decision, and it is informed, but it's still going to be a problem. What we know is that in our community, we had more people that were comfortable with the hybrid maybe than some others, right? Because in some communities, you might have feedback on a return to learn survey that says, 5% of the people are comfortable with a hybrid. We either need to be fully online or fully in person, right? That's not the feedback we got. We received a mixed bag, pretty close together with fully in person versus the hybrid.
Although I don't disagree, David, with more information to the parents, I don't making a decision on the 17th for the 24th is an awful difficult spot too, if it's different. I mean, and the numbers will change between now and the 17th, and they'll certainly change between now and the 14th.
Well, and again, I go back to, it would be nice to have consistency, but what we have learned through COVID-19 is that's a challenge, because there's potentially some consistency, but there's also that potential for a quick outbreak and have to pivot really quickly with what we're doing. And understand, I'm approaching it this way. Like, we can close our school district down at any point in time. That's a local decision, right? We can shut down. Severe weather, today, like if we would have been in school today, we would have been sending kids home early because we had roofing material that hit gas lines at Lakewood and at the middle school. So we had to clear the buildings, quickly, attack that. Oviatt had an electrical issue. So we would have probably been sending kids home, we would have been sending kids home early. So we can close down. We can close down for other reasons, heat, inclement weather, things like that. So I'm approaching this like, if we have something that pops up and is concerning, we can close down, and I will make that decision and then contact the board. And then if it's related to COVID-19, then we come together and decide, okay, do we pivot on our learning plan or not? Because the board has clearly weighed in that they want to, have the ultimate say on that. In the short term, we have some hours that we can, use. We've got extra hours in our year, just like we've got the last several years around mostly inclement weather days. So we can do that and keep people safe in the short term, and then long term, what are we going to do? So we just have to be prepared for that, is the possibility to pivot. But in the short term, like an individual day, we could, shut down if we needed to.
And I think in the third section, the substantially controlled, we were also considering the 15% absenteeism as a part of the guidance. 10%.
Yeah, 10%. Yeah.
Anyways, 10%, which obviously today's standards, we don't have that, right? Because we don't have anybody in school. But that would be a consideration we'd have to kind of keep in mind. And that was all absenteeism? That was kind of a question on the guidance, or is it just in general?
Yeah, so there's basically probably, one day for sure that you won't have that data because you won't have the first day of school because we haven't had anybody attending. And then coming out like spring break and winter break, there'll some other times, but you could use before you went into break, that absentee rate. So yes, we don't have that right now. So we really can't use that data until we start school and see what happens on the first day.
One thing, and Justin kind of touched on it a little bit, but or maybe David did, but flexibility, a married set of parents can be pretty flexible normally. But what about that single parent that works somewhere where they just can't get it off? And then we all of a sudden decide to go A/B straight from the bat, even though the numbers might not say we need to. We're putting undue stress on that particular parent, because they don't have an option. They might be working that low wage job. They might be, they might just not be able to make it work nearly as well as a lot of other families. So, I don't know, just one of the things to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's the irresistible force and the immovable object, right? Like, it's better for kids in so many ways to be in school, right? Like, in a lot of kids, right? Mental health standpoint, nutrition standpoint for some of our students. We have trained mandatory reporters that can monitor students if there any type of abuse that might be occurring towards a student. So there are all kinds of reasons where it's better for students. You just articulated another one, right? And for families, for students to be here. And then we're, a global pandemic that there's the possibility for community spread and exacerbate a problem that's been with us since, March or earlier.
President, how do you want to go about this? Are we waiting for a simple motion on a particular plan? Do you want to do survey of the table? How would you like to get us from where we are now, unless there's other questions for?
Right, I was just going to see, were there any other last-minute questions? I mean, I feel like we've asked some great questions and great conversation. So I guess the motion, or we would, if there is a motion to accept the learning model proposed, that would be the hybrid, just so everybody knows, 6 through 12. We could table it, as DT said, till next week. Or we can go with our original, we want everybody back, like we approved 2 weeks ago. So, let's maybe just, can we do a little where you're at?
I think we really, from Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah. Okay, let's do
can't
it.
really
We would
pull
need a
the-
motion for one or the other to accept, so, or any of those options, I guess, that we just said. Right?
So, sorry to
That's okay.
keep coming back to
Nope,
this,
you're
but
fine.
if we table this, it feels like, and Justin, I hear what you're saying, 17th of August, if you're going to do something different, is getting down to, we're already at crunch time. But as a board member, if we're in the none to minimal category of the guidance we have, I struggle to say that we should be an AB district. I don't feel comfortable with that because, all the pieces there say, have school, you're in minimal space. So then I get down to, is the minimal to moderate where we're going to pull the trigger on AB, or is the substantial controlled where we're going to pull the trigger on AB? And if the approach is 6th grade through 12th grades, minimal to moderate, we're going to pull the trigger on AB, okay. And then when it gets substantial controlled, that's when we're going to pull the trigger on everybody going AB. I guess if we table it, to me, I would like to communicate some more specific direction on what we're going to do and when we're going to do it. And I know it could change, but we do have these levels of guidance at this point in time. And I guess that does leave it up to a week from now. We're saying we're 7%, so we're going to go AB. But maybe the answer is substantial controlled is when we do that. I don't know. Maybe that's the question I'm getting down to for the board, is minimal to moderate when we want to pull that trigger, or is substantial controlled when we pull the trigger? And maybe that's a bad way to say it, but.
Well, it's the percentages,
Right.
Above 15% is a substantially controlled. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
I would just be in favor of finding some more specificity to that component of it so that parents can understand and plan what we're looking at and when we're going to make that decision. And today, I think, because it's so fresh and because this is pretty new to everybody, they don't have probably much of an idea about how we're looking at this.
Yeah, I'm not sure very many people have probably seen this matrix that we're looking,
I agree.
We've communicated it, but I mean.
Sure. I get that. It's just the world we're in.
I know, I get it, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I do look at the concern that we're at 6% now, and I do understand that trying to make sure that the staff and the students are not coming back, and all of a sudden we're in our district at 10% because we've thrown them all back together. I know they're out and about. I mean, I have teenagers. They are not home 24/7. I have a daughter who plays volleyball. They are trying to do what they can, and there are risks with that. I mean, we can't buckle down everything. So, I mean, 2 weeks ago I debated whether thinking, hybrid. Let's not, there's so much unknown. Let's not throw them back at one pool, and then 1 day, 2 days, where all of a sudden, we are out of school because we've hit so high. So, I mean, that's my concern is I want to be able to keep these kids in school as long as possible. I don't want to have to keep pulling them out. I don't want to have to go hybrid. Or fully online. So that's where I struggle between sending them back full-time and then just going ahead with hybrid, because I'm trying to keep us here as long as possible throughout the school year without having to jump back and forth. And I feel like if A gets sick and you have to, keep them home, not all of them, but, some of them, that at least there's still kids going into school and the majority of them are still getting that interaction with the teacher. So I guess that's where I come from. I mean, I would love them all to go back full-time, and that's when I voted that 2 weeks ago. At that moment, that's what I said, and right now, I'm like 50-50. I mean, to be honest, because I struggle, I see the benefits of both of them, so it's hard for me, but I do feel that we need to make a decision. I mean, I don't know if Monday is too late. A lot of people that I talk to don't even know that the hybrid's an option, like we're even considering that right now. They still think it's, return full-time. So I can see that's time, but we got to make sure that we are given enough time to everyone to plan, because it's 1 week from Monday that they will return to school.
And the 6%, and this is where we talked about Polk County, but the 6% is Warren County, not Norwalk specific, right?
Yeah, so one of the things I keep requesting from the governor's office, from legislators, from Iowa Department of Public Health, the DE, Warren County Health Services is, can you give us data by community? Warren County can do it by zip code, I believe, but that doesn't always break it down by, Norwalk or the district, and then the school district, because there is nuance. And the governor highlighted this last week in a press conference. Webster County has a high percentage positive, and her statement was that there is an outbreak in a correctional facility, I believe, up in Webster County. And so that's where you talk to the state and give the additional context. Well, my thought is, well, can you give us the additional context right now in terms of where is this situated as a long-term care facility? Is, Warren County, that 6% positivity rate, is that different, for Norwalk than it is for Indianola, for Carlisle, so on and so forth? But we don't have that level of data right now. And of course, we can't gather it because we don't have access to, all the people in Warren County who might be reporting.
And I know the counter to that argument is that, yeah, we have Polk County right next door, and we have people that travel in, and I mean, I know you could sit on both sides of the fence there, but where I was, I guess, maybe going to go to, and we're going to talk circles around, is these two metrics the right one? Should there be, how many are hospitalized? How many, what other factors should you really kind of consider that we don't have numbers for, that aren't provided here? But to a point where we have an automatic switch to, or consideration to hybrid, I personally would like that percentage to be much higher than 6%, knowing that that's 6% in Warren County. It could be 1% in Norwalk, it could be 0, it could be 6, I don't know, I mean.
Could be higher. Could be higher.
Yeah, by pro rata, but.
Yeah, so if we had 10 people tested in Norwalk and we had 8 of those test positive, obviously that's an 80% positivity rate, but then if we had 100 people, right, or plus whatever, would make it 6% in Warren County. So that's the nuance that I'm asking for, because I want to know, like, is this truly a problem in our district? Because right now, on that kind of macro level at the state and the macro level at Warren County, it's not giving the detailed data that can help us make better informed decisions. It's an informed decision. It can be better informed with that, more specified data. It's no different than as we approach this as a school district. We aren't going to say, as a school district, we have, if we had 5 positive cases of COVID, we have 5 positive cases. We would provide the board with a breakdown of, like, that's 5 at, one particular building, or is it spread out amongst all buildings, right? But we're being asked to make some decisions based on not being able to get that granular data.
That's where I was kind of struggling with, it's 6%, yes, it meets criteria 2 by definition of this matrix. Is 6 the same as 15? In this matrix it is, in 14. But to me that's double, it is, and not that we're rounding down or, I'm just trying to get to where's our trigger points, or do we even want to be, I might be on the opposite side and say, I don't know if I want to be that specific. Like if it gets to 12%, do we need to automatically flip, or is that kind of a decision? I'm not confident that 6% today warrants setting that precedent that every time it gets above into this bucket that we should automatically be in a hybrid model or be looking at that as an option, although it is always in our plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can get this data off. Again, it's not as granular as we'd like it, but you can get this data off of the Iowa Department of Public Health website, like the increase in positive cases in Warren County, right? And my numbers, I need to go back and confirm them, but this is a rough estimate of where we've gone since like the 29th of July. We went up 10, 10, 5, 13, 7, 7, 2, 7, 7, 5, 1, 1. In terms of positive cases from July 29 down through, I have it through August 9th. And so, because obviously today, when I looked at it this morning, it wasn't fully updated for the 10th. So, like, that is some data. Like, it gives you a notion of kind of where we're at. And of course, what people are concerned about that none of us know is we bring kids back into buildings and we bring staff into buildings, and what happens? Will those numbers stay the same? Will they go down, or will they increase? We don't know. And that's where, we have staff that are nervous. We have administrators that are taking a look at it and our dynamics and say, should we start with a hybrid based on these new metrics that come out from the state, or should we just stay with the status quo plan that we've selected, fully back in person with the required remote learning option?
And this whole model is dependent upon parents making good decisions, fever, symptoms, send to school. I mean, and that doesn't matter if we're in hybrid or not, right? I mean,
Yeah, and that's the same in the community, right? Because we have people interacting in the community. People, are they going to work when they're symptomatic, or are they not? Are they going and getting tested for COVID-19, or are they not? Are they, going out and playing with friends when they're symptomatic or not? And then we know from COVID-19 that some people have it and they're asymptomatic. So they may, think they're making fine decisions, but they haven't been tested because there's no symptoms.
DT, we're wrestling with the percentage and when, at least I am, and I think that's where Justin's getting to a little bit. A comment on that would be, I know a lot of boards, whether it's school or others, have a lot of medical advisors. For me, that's a piece of this that I am missing just a little bit, I feel, at the board table. And I know we have that in the parental committee, and I think we have some pretty good folks on there that are pretty in tune with all of this. But having a little insight from them or something, a little specificity for this board from some of those people that might even be part of interpreting some of this. If the next week is a table period to apply, when and what trigger, is it 8% that we say then, Justin? Maybe, you could, because there is wiggle room within the 6 to 14%. I call it wiggle room, but it's, there's not an absolute strategy of what you're supposed to do there. So it feels like you could have something like that, and that is the largest gap. It's an 8% variance in that gap. Every other gap is less than that. That'd be one piece. And the other piece that I would really like to have applied to this is some specificity for parents to say, if it does trigger, we're going to do it for a month, or we're going to do it for a month and a half before we change. 2 weeks to me is, I just don't even know how the teachers to arrange that and going back and forth. I think that to tell parents, okay, if that happens and we hit that, we're going to be there for a month. So you need to plan on that, parents. That's some of the word that I'd like to get out, and I don't know those percentages, Justin. I don't know right now.
And DT, when you first started tracking this too, or at least when you sent the initial email, wasn't the positivity rate closer to 9%, right?
Yeah, it was. And I got too many tabs open, sorry.
Well,
Let me
I
find
thought
it.
you said that. So it's come down since.
Yeah, originally it was 9.06%. That was the first day I got data from Warren County, and so now it's at 6%. I don't, unless I'm missing something, the state's just giving full percentages. They're not giving
doing the 9.8.
to the tenths or the 100th of a percent.
I mean, I tend to agree a little bit with Dave and Justin on the 6%. I feel I'm a little uneasy with moving us quite to the hybrid yet, but because I want more than anything to have the kids back, and I know everybody else does, but again, it's what is that trigger point? I think that's what maybe we have to come up with. I don't know how Brian and Michelle are falling on that, but
Well,
but I don't want to wait this too long, because I understand Justin's point. I mean, we can't keep procrastinating, so we'll have to decide at some point whether Monday is a logical time, or even if we have to meet again to do it before then. I'm not sure.
So what I'm trying to balance is the feedback from a lot of different segments, right? And we will get, that will change a little bit once we get back to school, right? There will be, oh, I didn't notice, and this is going to be okay. And, oh, I didn't know that, and, I'm not comfortable with some of that. And some of that feedback's starting to come back as we get staff meetings. We'll have to provide some clarifying guidance about, just expectations and things like that. So, in the lack of certainty, perhaps the best course of action is we have a full administrative team meeting tomorrow. The board's had a healthy discussion tonight, asked a lot of questions. Perhaps what we can do is go to the administrative team and talk about some of the things that have been mentioned here, the possibility of tying, perhaps going to the hybrid with certain metrics. And then provide that back to the board by Monday, because I think, again, the challenge is that you all are in and we are in as a district is we may have to pivot without much warning to a different model. Like if we spike up to the 15%, right, then that's when the guidance starts talking about going to a hybrid model. And of course, if we're above 20% positivity rate, going to fully online. We don't have control over that. And specifically right now, because we aren't, we don't have as much say over some of the students' schedules and what they're doing. We will have more say once they return to school. And so perhaps that is the right course of action, is to get the board some more information, let the administrative team digest some of what happened tonight, and come back with a recommendation by Monday. And this week we can put out some communication to our parents just to let them know that a hybrid model is under consideration by the board. And we'll know more by Monday night based on current data and the new state guidance that came out on the 30th. So the board's had, this is the first time the board's had an opportunity to discuss that really in person. Thoughts about that?
Well, and is there a way, this is going back to David's comment too, I appreciate that you would take it back to the team and get more details to us. I think that could be helpful. And then, but David had also mentioned the medical piece of it.
Yeah, I've written down in my notes parent advisory feedback from those, medical professionals.
Or our 2 clinics in town, they work as well, a representative for, if we can't, if the parents aren't available.
A couple other things I was thinking, one thing that could be representative for our school district is if we internally had a 14-day rolling absenteeism number. And maybe we could set an internal guideline based on that. It's not something that the people would be able to just log on to the website and look it up, but it'd be something that would be more specific to our school district. So that's one thing. And then I'd just like to just get a little bit of feedback on, what happens if teachers start getting sick, and what's the backup plan, what's the contingency plan? Because I don't really have a good feel for how many teachers can get sick before it all of a sudden turns into a big deal, and all of a sudden we can't staff classes and substitutes aren't available. So.
Yeah, and I'll invite Dawn and Allison to chime in here as well, but I think it comes down to 2 things. One is just sheer number, and it's not just teachers. I mean, we have principals that will be in buildings. We'll have assistant principals, student advocates, superintendent, bus drivers, paras, teachers, athletic coaches, activity sponsors, and so we'll have a lot of adults working with kids, every single area, nutrition workers, right, custodians, and so. We will monitor, one, the number per category that might be impacted, because obviously if we have like 50% of our bus drivers or 60% of our bus drivers impacted, that's a problem. Because we can't, I'm looking at Allison, I don't think we can get 60% coverage for substitutes in our bus drivers. No. And so then we have protocols in terms of covering classes. We've said the priority is to cover classes. And that comes to the superintendent as well. So I might be deployed to help cover classes. But then again, is that short term, or are we expecting a long-term solution to that? And are our staff members out sick and they can't work? Or are they using CARES leave and they can't work because they're, taking care of kids or something like that? Or are they able to work from home? And then if we pivoted to, say, if we had a large spread in our district, our community, and we're at that substantially uncontrolled type of situation, can we have a lot of our staff members that are able to work remotely? So I think all those dynamics will play into it. Level of quality, and then the number, or the quality of the people that are going to provide the instruction to students primarily.
So that's all great info, and that's the only reason it's hard for us just to say, hey, I've got a 12.5% positivity, and that's when we'd make the switch. We can't really provide that guidance because there's more than just positivity rate that we're basing our decision on. So, I don't know, it's tough.
My only concern with that, Brian, and again, I'll restate it, I've been a guidance-based approach proponent of this from the beginning, and I still am. That's the guidance we have, and I struggle to stray too far from that unwittingly, and I don't think that I'm capable of sitting here at this table and saying what other metrics should we toss into the hopper, and that's where I think if we're going to do that, we've got to have somebody from the outside that is a professional in medical area. That's what this whole pandemic is. It's a medical issue. It's not for a banker to tell you about it. And so if you want to get into other areas, I'm all for that, and applying a little more. Okay, we're at 11%, plus we've got absenteeism, plus we have, whatever measures you just mentioned there. I think we have to have a little input on that from someone else than us.
Yeah, maybe there's a driving metric, and just, you set that percentage, or have a healthcare professional help us set that number, and then aside from that, the parents know that there are other extenuating circumstances that could force us to switch modes, even though that number, we didn't reach that number that we set.
Right.
And maybe that's how you approach it.
And again, the complicating factor within using those other metrics is they're not accounted for in the state guidance. And so if we had, I'll play an example out. If we had 40% of our staff out, I don't know how we would be able to cover that. We can't cover with 40% of our substitutes for bus drivers, food service workers, paras, teachers, so on and so forth. And so if we had that situation, I would be having a conversation with the state about, can we go to required remote learning? Because we think we can accomplish that with quality, but we can't do in-person learning. That is not covered under this matrix. And obviously, I'd be having a conversation with the board in that scenario. But right now, what the guidance says is, you can't even apply to the state unless you have 15 to 20% positivity rate. And that's, again, I said at the start of this presentation, or earlier in the meeting, using kind of a single data point is what's challenging about this guidance. It doesn't transition to 2 data points until you get to substantially controlled. And then it's really only about student absences. It's not accounting for staff. But know that I would be having a conversation with the board, with the administrative team, and the state to say, this is our dynamic locally. And we can shut down, right? Just normal times, take COVID-19 out of it. There have been districts who have had to shut down because too many staff were out with, say, the flu, right? But usually that's a couple days, maybe a week, that you have to shut down and you come back. And you might get some waiver from the state for instructional hours or something like that, or adding time onto the school day to finish out the year. Some of those situations have occurred. And so that's the conversation I would be having with the state, and how can we approach this and still accomplish what we want to accomplish, which is maybe, one, providing high quality instruction for our students in a safe environment, and perhaps not going into mid to late June, or mid to late June, or with having to add on to the calendar and stuff like that. So that's the way I would approach that type of a problem, because this guidance can't cover every scenario. But this is what we've been asking for from the state, to David's point of, tell us what some of the parameters are. Give us some guidance about what we should be using to make our decision. This is the guidance that's come down. This is what is in front of us tonight.
DT, I think you were making a recommendation of how you would maybe go forward right now. I don't know that I got to the end of that. I think you said potentially meeting with your staff tomorrow.
Yeah, we meet with the full admin team tomorrow, and we can update the board, obviously, on kind of what some recommendations might be coming out of that based on your questions and your feedback tonight. And then we can, potentially look towards the 17th, get some communication out to parents, like, given current dynamics, we may be considering the AB model by the time we hit August 24th.
So I think then we would be looking for a motion to table this then, if we go with what DT's saying, to the 17th, although Justin won't be at that meeting.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to really evaluate my schedule or see if we could do maybe a 3 p.m. in the afternoon meeting. But other numbers I would like, DT, before this decision is, can we get the number of students off campus at the high school? Because I know we also approved for open period for juniors. So I'm trying to grasp, and Chris, I guess I could have asked you this as well, is, we've already got about 200 kids that have chose the online only, and we'll have X amount of kids that are doing classes outside of our building. And then open campus, kind of what does that also look like for social distancing?
Yeah, and I don't know, we can work on getting some of those numbers, but we have release periods for some of our high school students that they may not be here. Okay, but just the release period doesn't tell you enough, because sometimes they stay, sometimes they go during the period. Probably more so what we could find out is anybody that's requested that first or last period. Am I getting that right, team? They can request first or last period not to be here if they don't have a class. But the other information we put out to families about if they have like a study hall or an open period. Is that just freshmen? 8th and 9th up through, not 6th and 7th, 8th and 9th have that option, the last period of the day or the first period of the day, correct? Yep. And so do you have that data yet around who's requested that? Do we have that? Okay, we haven't asked them yet.
We're just trying to get a population piece, right, of how many people.
Yep.
I know it fluctuates day to day and period to period, but
Yeah, we don't have that data.
Any other discussion? I think we maybe are winding down on that. Am I correct? Other questions or things we want from DT information? Okay. So we would need a motion for some sort of action on this. Table it till next Monday, next meeting. If we indeed want to get that information back from the administrative team and the parent advisory group, I would suggest that might be our option going forward.
But we also have an option to do it sooner than that, correct? Like if they meet tomorrow, we could do it sooner than Monday, or does it have to wait till a Monday? Or, I mean, how much time would you need if we tabled it to get the information that you need to come back and?
Well, let me get you the information, because the board can call a special meeting as needed. This is obviously, or an emergency meeting. This is one of those situations where, a special meeting certainly could be called if need be. So.
Do we need like 24-hour notice on that?
Emergency meeting, you would not. I don't know that this would qualify. I'd have to check with our attorney on this qualifying as an emergency meeting, but special meeting, yes. You typically give 24 hours advance notice. Yeah, we just schedule it Monday because it's normally when they meet, so we could accomplish both of those tasks.
Right. It's fine.
So we need a motion.
So I'll make a motion to table the learning model modification until August 17th.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
do we want to amend that motion by date?
Yeah, maybe we just say to a special meeting date, or so we can play around with that date.
to a special meeting dated on August 17th?
No, maybe not the August 17th, so in case we want to meet earlier.
Or as determined with a 24-hour notice posted to the public?
Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's okay.
Okay. Is that okay, Justin, with that modification?
Jake, you got all that?
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Did I hear a second? Did not hear a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table the proposed learning model. All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Okay, that motion is approved. Thank you all for
you
that.
gotta make sure Justin was here yet, didn't you?
Yeah, great discussion, great discussion. I appreciate all the input, appreciate the administrative team providing us that feedback as well. All right, so the next item,
Oh, President Wright, could we maybe take a 5-minute stretch?
Yeah, let's do
yes,
that.
I'm sorry, yeah, we will, yeah, let's take a 5-minute break.
I want you to be happy more than I want you. Just like you do. It's gonna be okay. Alright. Just let me stay. Just like you do. We just can't keep doing this to ourselves. Sweep me off my feet just like you do. Just like you do. Take my heart. Goodbyes are always the worst part, huh? I'm always gonna love you. You know that, right?
Okay,
Right.
so the next item we are going to move to is the board goals. Our proposed board goals and objectives, which DT sent this out to all of us, and I know, Justin, you provided some feedback on some additional objectives, but he has put in there the ones in yellow are, sorry, my glasses are foggy. The yellow are the current, or you did take some out, or you put red was the ones you recommending to delete. The yellow are keeping in there. The blue ones were suggested by Dawn,
Yep.
and the green is suggested by, is that by you, DT, or by others? Sorry, I can't remember the color
Yeah,
coding.
the safe, that was recommended at the board retreat.
Okay, all right, so the yellow are in, the red are proposed to be taken out and the blue are to consider, right? And then we probably, Justin, I don't believe yours are in there yet.
Not yet. And so what Justin recommended was goal number 2, add annual update from technology, activity, transportation, and nutrition budgets, forecasts, and major projects. And then for goal number 3, are we still doing 2 and 3 or just labor relations? So continue meeting with teacher pay and comp committee and continue meeting with labor relations committee. We're continuing to do that. So I don't know if we need to list those. So if the board is agreeable to taking those out, I think that's pretty much an established practice in our district. So hearing no objection, I'll just mark those in red. And then could 1 and 7 be combined under 3? So improve teacher salaries and review district salaries and how they compare to like school districts.
I think they can be.
Okay. So, all right.
DT, back on that 2 and 3. I'm not, yes, it's regular practice. I still think it's probably one item might be significant or represent the importance in the school, but I'm not sure that both of them this year continue to be as pressing as it was for the prior year.
Yeah.
It's kind of where I was going. I might take a little wordsmithing to merge them, but
Okay. Let me do this. All right, orange will be merge. Orange, merge.
Okay, as long as you know that.
Okay. But yes, labor relations and pay and comp are still meeting. Should 1 and 7 be combined? Or get that combined with 7. And then should number 8 be specified as leader in me? And that's under goal number 4. Right.
no, it was still number 3.
Okay.
It says work with building principals to study industry leading cultural practices in order to, which my screen's a little, there we go. To enhance building culture in order to make buildings great, fun places to work. And I know that's not quite what maybe Leader in Me is, but to me, Leader in Me is a cultural program for the district.
Yep.
And if not, we can word it differently.
You know, as I look at when that implement a collected vision, that 3.2 that's on there, that actually is a direct reference to Leader in Me kind of work, because it's that cultural work that impacts student learning in the long run. So I'm wondering if those two can't also be merged in some common language. 'Cause
Number 8 and
I
3.2.
think they mean the same thing.
So let Don and I take a run at this, and we'll get some revisions out to the board prior to the 24th. And I'm sorry, and Kate as well.
But you need one called out as teacher and district salaries, not just I mean,
I use 7 all employees.
Well, let me take a run at it, because we might just mash those up so we can identify both of those things under one item. Yep. Okay, and then the other one under 4, continue to provide and enhance reliable distribution of school events and information. We'll get that added.
Yeah, that's like, tonight, obviously, we're live and in color, I hope, but I know we try to do a lot of distribution of things, and we have a great group of staff and students that help with a lot of that presentation, but obviously we'll have to continue that model and find other ways to get some of this content out.
And any other comments? Why don't I suggest this, instead of spending a lot of time on it tonight, send those to DT or me or both, and then
Yep,
we'll get that out.
we'll get it modified for the 24th.
All right, so the next item is the superintendent goals for 2020 and 21.
Yes, so those are attached to the agenda. And I think I captured our discussion, but I'm open to suggestions. So again, those goals would be to, the graduation rate increased, provide quarterly updates to the board about the implementation of the district reorganization plan. Teacher pay and compensation committee will make pay and compensation recommendations to the board. That'll be by March 1st, 2021. Stay on schedule with NPEC and classroom addition project. And so that's primarily we will go to begin construction during the second semester of the 2021 school year. FastBridge data, again, that's one that's pending from last year. So we'll see how this year goes. And then needs assessment completed per board policy 103. And so that'll be done by June 2021. Any questions on that? And so I would appreciate a motion to approve the superintendent goals.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve the 2020-21 superintendent goals?
DT, is there any concern as we change some of our goal language on ours, your column about superintendent goals, that the numbers themselves don't change, but I don't know if maybe some of the topics within there might.
Yeah, that will be changed once the board goals, change.
We need a motion.
Okay, so he said what he asked, it doesn't make a difference between the two. That's what he's saying. Okay, I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah.
I will make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 superintendent goals.
A second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The superintendent goals have been approved. Dawn, you're up next for the Wilson Compass and Language Plan.
Yes, if this contract looks similar, you had already approved this back in April, but what had happened is there was a change of services, and they went from a face-to-face model to a virtual model, and in turn, the cost actually was decreased by about $3,500. So we asked them to write us another contract to get that approved so that we could go follow through with that. This was actually initially approved as part of the ELA adoption.
So we need a motion to approve the changes to that plan, right? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the new
Dawn, just to
plan.
make sure you didn't have any concern with them being more virtual than what they were. Like, you feel like they can still fulfill the contract as stated, being virtual?
Yes. We have had numerous conversations about exactly what types of service this looked like, and although it was a little reduction in cost, the quality, I think, is still going to be there.
Okay. Then I will make a motion to approve the Wilson Compass and Language Plan for 2021 agreement.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the Wilson Compass. Yeah. Okay, that's been approved. Moving on to new business. Allison, you have the first item with the Ashley Creekset's late resignation appeal.
Can I interrupt? Over here. Yeah, sorry. We did have a public comment card come in for this.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So I think we should do that first, correct?
Okay, yes, all right, I did not know that, sorry.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
So Ashley, come on up.
Oh, JK, before we enter this, Kate, did we examine whether this needs to be under closed session, this whole discussion? We've
Yeah.
vetted that with others, and we're all okay.
Actually, that flowed through me, and yes, we did, and I gave Ashley the option of being in closed session, but she requested to do this in open session, and Ashley can confirm that when she comes up and gives her public comments.
Okay. Just wanted to, I figured that was vetted.
Yep.
And Jake, Ashley, you have three minutes.
Okay.
And, yeah, we can't make any comments, but we'll listen to you for 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ashley Preikset, and I have been an educator in the Norwalk School District for the past 13 years. In the unprecedented time that we're currently in, with the first global pandemic in 100 years, there are two main reasons why I'm here tonight, seeking your grace to release me from my contract effective immediately. Again, 13 years. On March 12th, when I picked up my contract for the 2021 school year, I had no idea how much our world would be turned upside down and the impact this world would have on my teaching role at Norwalk, as well as my family. My role this year would put me at an increased risk towards the virus, and I do not feel comfortable with. I do not feel safe visiting businesses across counties to find businesses or to find placements. And once placements are secured, I do not feel safe completing my continuous visits to check in with students and supervisors. The safety measures that businesses are taking could be different than what is in place at our school. As such, while Norwalk schools are not accepting visitors, this role would have me acting as a constant visitor to outside locations. Additionally, I need to be able to be a mother and caregiver for my two elementary-aged children that attend school in another district. During this unprecedented time, I cannot effectively manage teaching in a county that differs from which my children attend school. As you discussed tonight, return to learn plans have varied by district. So to the extent my children are required to apply virtual learning in their district at a time when Norwalk doesn't, I would be prevented from adequately fulfilling my responsibilities as a mother and caregiver. As any mother would do, I need to put my children's health and safety and growth first. Again, my role is not having me come back to a school building. My role has me in the extreme circumstance of exposing my health by entering many businesses across counties. I do not feel safe in the requirements of what my role now is. I am asking for your grace during these unprecedented times to be released from my contract with Norwalk Schools. I have read Board Policy 407.2 and the handbook and believe that the reasons I have given above meet the criteria of being unusual in extreme circumstances. I appreciate being provided the opportunity to speak before the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So I printed out copies for you of Board Policy 407.2 and then also the handbook language. This request has been vetted by Superintendent McGee and myself. It has also been vetted by the Employee Experience Subcommittee. The recommendations so far have been to deny the request for release based on our current, past precedent and decisions that have been made by the board based on our handbook and policy language. So as is Ashley's right, she has requested to be in front of the board so you all can make that decision as a group as opposed to just the Employee Experience Subcommittee. Are there any questions that I can answer for anyone?
What is the likelihood of finding a suitable replacement at this stage of the calendar? Or maybe a better question is, does the role continue as currently designed or built or done in the past based on a change in personnel?
Sure. I'll answer that in two parts. So the first is finding a suitable replacement. Nothing's impossible, but it would be very difficult. Based on the endorsements required for that position, and being a multi-occupations teacher, there's just not very many out there. But I mean, Chris, based on your experience hiring for that position, is that something that, a suitable replacement, is that something that would be feasible in August? Right. which would still be a trickle-down effect, basically. And so we'd be looking at finding a business teacher in August, as opposed to multi-occupations, which is, easier than multi-occupations for sure. But we also don't have business teachers growing on trees either. Those are definitely shortage areas. Second question, the second part of your question. Oh, the visiting businesses and the way that the position is going to look.
Yes.
So Chris and I have talked about that. We know that's going to look different this year. We know that a lot of businesses aren't in person or will not be able to accommodate internships. So, we have been prepared to accommodate Ashley's concerns since she first brought them forward, as far as, not requesting she visit businesses that she's not comfortable visiting, doing remote visits, things like that. We don't anticipate that there will be a lot of kids with outside intern placements. They may be doing research projects, or, we'll have to get creative on what those kids will be doing. But we're prepared to accommodate Ashley's concerns in regards to visiting businesses.
Although we're not able to discuss other teachers or names in this particular discussion, in your opinion, based on discussions from COVID-19, does this set the board up for an onslaught of others asking for their release based on extreme or insinuating circumstances as used in this discussion?
Sure. So based on my conversations with other employees who have had concerns, specifically around COVID, I don't believe it meets the definition of unusual and extreme circumstance, especially when I think about previous teachers that you all have released from their contract late and the circumstances that they went through or are going through. Those were different, more rooted in medical concerns than what some of the reasons that Ashley is mentioning are. So I believe, to answer your question a little better, I believe that if you chose to release Ashley tonight, you would potentially have several more teachers that would come forward with similar concerns that you would have to consider as well.
And to your comment about there is a certain stigma about the release of teachers over the summer and what information is given to the board and obviously what is not released to the public, making that somewhat of a, well, why did so-and-so get an opportunity to be released after the contract period versus before, which is a little bit of a tough spot for a board member because, yes, I have been given
absolutely.
the information.
Absolutely.
But certainly a very delicate HR and, legal restraint in terms of how you can answer that question. Also some ethics and morals in there as well about how you can answer that question. So if I understand you right, we have vetted it through the staff with Mr. Basinger and through the employee subcommittee on all the alternatives and options that we've can vet as of tonight based on whatever the decision of the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Justin, I can add a little bit there too, being on the employee experience subcommittee. So, when you look at the handbook, it does say in unusual and in extreme circumstances. And while I empathize with Ashley and her situation, because I think there's probably several employees that feel, similarly, and this is not normal times. And so I do empathize with her, but I feel like we have a new normal now, and we have provided, DT, Allison and Chris all have said that they would make accommodations for her, and her job is not going to look the same, and I don't think that businesses are going to let her come in there if it's unsafe, nor would we want our students in there if it's going to be unsafe. And my biggest concern is I just don't want this to set a precedent because of where we're at, with the pandemic. And again, other teachers could probably have similar feelings and without having those extreme circumstances or an extreme medical condition or moving or anything like that, I feel like that's why I think the Employee Experience Committee, well, I don't think, that's why we agreed with what the recommendation was to not accept the resignation. So I just get worried that we're at this point right before school starts, and to have an onslaught of requests would be detrimental to the district.
So looked at the position specifically. It wasn't just overall, but we looked at what the needs of this classroom, what it would take. I mean, maybe, like you said, we could find someone with the trickle-down effect of trying to find, it's different to find one teacher to potentially find 2 or 3 teachers based on how things were moved, and with being within 2 weeks of this school, I feel like Allison and DT will work as much as possible to make the accommodations so there isn't that unease and that, of going into the businesses or, being around the kids. So that was part of it too, is just making sure that we know that her safety is number one and that all of that will be taken into consideration.
Are there other questions, concerns, comments?
Just big scope, this may be Board of Education, DT for you, is the scope is that contract is binding for the year and only contingent on release is based on the board at this particular juncture for not only current employment records, but also future employment records? Or is that contract null and void after it completes for this next school year?
Yeah, and Kate can weigh in too with this, but the contracts are good for a year. There are continuing contracts, but we have provisions in place with early resignation, where you can receive $1,500 if you decide to resign by December 1st. No, early
resignation.
for next year.
Yep.
Yep. And then the BOE doesn't approach anything from an ethical standpoint. If you resign prior to June 30th, they have a common cutoff. So this resignation was received obviously after June 30th for our board policy for the BOE. So yes, there could be an ethical issue if a teacher jumped a contract after June 30th. So that is in play. And then the 279 contracts, they afford teachers the opportunity to protect their positions by a certain point in time, because they auto-renew. And then likewise, it affords districts the opportunity to know what their teaching staff goes into the next year by issuing those contracts and then having some ability to release a teacher from a contract, or an administrator too, but specifically teachers. And so it does afford both parties that. And Ashley and I had a conversation about the contracts, and she was appreciative that the board issued the contracts when we did, gave our staff. And I don't want to put words in Ashley's mouth. I think I captured it, is that she understood that it's a two-way agreement, and that this is the process that has to play out. And so that's the point we're at, is we have a contract in place, and then it flows through recommendation from Allison and myself to employee experience to the board on whether or not to accept that resignation.
We ask a lot of our teachers. We are bringing in 28, 30 new teachers, which to me is maybe too much just in general for turnover for my liking. I know some of them are new positions. But I also am trying to internalize having folks not have their heart in it or not want to be here either. I'm just, as I think about productivity and I think about how people, if they're passionate about what they do and where they want to be, you have that kind of commitment towards making things well. But I think at the end of the day, Mary Beth and Michelle, being on that committee, if you guys have vetted this, I'm comfortable that you guys have asked a lot of those questions in the session not at this board table to really vet any other short-term and long-term issues with this particular piece, because my fear honestly is that we would then have a run on teachers coming to the board. And in this scenario, in this situation, we already have our hands completely full with what the virus and the conditions are in front of us, to then trying to fill staff at this stage of the game is, maybe nothing is impossible, Allison, but it certainly doesn't make it easy.
Well, and I do feel that with the accommodation piece, that everybody here, DT, Allison, and Chris, have agreed to work with her. So that was part of my decision too, is just that they're very willing to work with her to, make whatever accommodations we need to make, or can make, right?
And Mary
Yes,
Beth,
yep.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I just wanted to understand what you're saying there. My understanding is, because the policy is in place for a reason, we do it this way for a reason, the timing of everything. We have a employee experience subcommittee recommendation to enforce the policy as is. We have a staff recommendation to do that. The piece of COVID that is the uniqueness for me is the accommodation component of it, because I think all employers are trying to do that, trying to keep people, feeling good about whatever their level of discomfort is or is not.
Right.
And you're saying that you guys as the employee experience subcommittee have heard what those were and understand that those were tried to be made, and we tried to work with.
What the committee heard was that they had shared with Ashley that they would accommodate her. We don't have the details of any accommodations being made right now. I mean, we talked about that businesses maybe wouldn't be allowing her to come in, and some things could be done online, but nothing specific by any means. And so
No, we've just, since Ashley has brought this to our attention, Chris and I have been brainstorming and trying to think of ways where we can kind of alleviate her concerns, but we have not accommodated. She's in progress as far as accommodation goes.
I think the key thing to say with accommodations is that it's a process that you go through to try to understand what the concerns are, what the options might be, and sometimes that comes from a principal, sometimes it comes from a superintendent, sometimes it comes from the employee, from Allison. And so that it's a process that you go through, where Allison is doing a lot of this work with principals, with Dawn, trying to work through this with our teachers specifically, but we also have some other employees. And Allison is well versed in this, because we get like physical accommodation requests and other things that come up. We had a leave request for the start of this year based on a particular employee's leave situation that we've provided an accommodation with that. And so it's a process. It's just that not always can every accommodation be granted or even considered, because it might be against the law, it might be against the board policy, might be, there might be reasons for that. But we do approach it from a standpoint of trying to understand what the problem is, and then work to see if we can come up with some, I would say a win-win situation where we can help to address the employees' concerns and address the district's concerns and needs as well.
Did you have a question, Michelle?
No, I'm just making sure there's no other questions regarding. Then at this time, I would like to approve the denial for the request of Ashley's Priekstad's late resignation. Or make a motion, sorry.
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
If there's no other questions at this time, I'd like to make the motion to deny the Mrs. Priekstad's late resignation.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from board members?
Do you want to list the board policy in that motion at the end of the day for minutes?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Would you like to have the board policy number in that motion?
Oh, yes.
To
Yeah.
finalize it for the minutes?
Can you add the, based on board policy 407.2 to the motion?
And the certified staff handbook. And the certified staff handbook, too.
Oh, and the certified handbook, certified staff handbook as well.
Okay. So that's been added. Brian, you still okay seconding that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That motion carries, is approved. Moving on to the Iowa Department of Transportation settlement. Kate.
Carlos Guerra, our transportation director, worked through the Iowa Department of Education and applied for a grant under the Volkswagen settlement provisions. Some of the money that was settled in their lawsuit had to go back to governmental organizations. So at any rate, we applied, and Carlos did a great job, and the district was awarded a $25,000 grant, but we have to use that money toward the replacement of a vehicle that meets emission standards per the EPA for this particular lawsuit. At any rate, with that, we've designated the bus. You can see there we're going to replace our 2006 school bus, special education school bus, which needs to be replaced in the next year or two anyway. So this is very helpful to the school district and will help reduce our special education costs. So tonight, I'd like you to approve the agreement, but the agreement is actually with the Iowa DOT, Department of Transportation, and it's going to require a lot of paperwork processing and emailing of information. So if it's okay, you would approve the agreement, and Director President Wright would sign that, but then I'd like you to appoint myself, if it's okay, as the point person for the DOT, so all of these communications don't go back to President Wright for her to follow up on.
So you want two motions?
Justin, I agree. If you could have one to approve the agreement with Iowa DOT, and then a second motion to appoint me as a district agent or representative to complete the process.
I'll make a motion to approve the Iowa DOT agreement for the Environmental Mitigation Trust Project.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that agreement has been approved. And then do we have a motion to appoint Kate as the agent?
I'll make a motion to appoint Kate Baldwin as the authorized grant recipient representative for the Iowa DOT agreement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign? Okay, that is approved. Allison, I'll turn it back over to you for the return to work plan.
Sure. So we created this return to work plan kind of to work in tandem with the return to learn, to spell out some procedures for staff for this year, and how, it's kind of meant to be a little helper for the handbook. We didn't want to go in and change the handbook to reflect COVID, because, hopefully this won't be a long-term thing. But we did want to put something in writing to kind of express what changes are going to be made at the district level in regards to staff and returning to work. It's a little bit purposefully vague. I've received that feedback a couple times that it's vague. That is mainly because a lot of it is going to be on a case-by-case basis, especially when you're talking about leaves, accommodations. I don't want to make a blanket statement when every situation is going to be handled differently. So we tried to touch on, we're going to support staff. We're going to do everything we can. We've got lots of options available to us. The federal government has added some additional levels of support for us as far as leave goes. So we tried to articulate that in the return to work plan to kind of ease any concerns that maybe staff members may have, like what happens if I get COVID and I'm out. Tried to relieve some of those concerns, but also not, making promises that maybe each individual situation wouldn't warrant keeping. Do any of you have any questions about the return to work? A lot of it is just focusing on kind of, symptom monitoring and reporting. There's an online AEA online training for staff that I believe it was part of Senate File 2310 that all staff members had to complete some sort of training for COVID. And so the AEA came out with an online training. It takes about 15 or 20 minutes. So all staff will be going through that and completing that before students return. Talked a lot about purchasing and custodial, so cleaning operations was something from the staff. We got a lot of questions about how often will my room be clean, who's going to be responsible for doing this level, what kind of supplies will be provided to me. So I sat down with Richard in Buildings and Grounds, and we kind of came up with a game plan of, each classroom is going to be stocked with X number of supplies, and then they can request to be refilled. 612 students can assist the teachers in, we talked about, do they hand out paper towels? The teachers hand out paper towels as they enter the classroom. The teacher sprays the desk, the kid wipes their desk down, throws their paper towel away, sits down and has class. Elementary students will not be assisting in cleaning at all due to a variety of concerns, but tried to spell out some of those concerns that we've received from staff.
Allison did bring this in front of the subcommittee, just so you know. Michelle and I did look at it, and so I think we asked several questions and felt comfortable with what you're looking at tonight to put it in front of the board for approval.
We did discuss how it was more of an overview of the things that needed to be done, that we couldn't be as specific as she stated, just because there are so many different things that could occur or needed. But I felt like it gave a good guideline and maybe more of a safety for the teachers that know that we are looking into this, their safety is our concern, and these are the things that, are being considered during this time.
Yes. Yeah, I'm hopeful that it kind of narrows down of like, yes, we will be providing ample cleaning supplies, and this is exactly what your classroom's going to have. Some of those, how you clean your room throughout the day to your comfort level is up to you, but we'll make sure you have ample supplies. So things like that kind of give that a little bit defined autonomy, I guess, if you will, to kind of help them make some decisions in their classrooms.
So speaking of supplies, how does Richard feel about our actual supply of supplies?
Yeah, he's, I think hand sanitizer, gloves early on, and N95 masks are probably the biggest issue still. But no, I think he's feeling really confident about cleaning and hand sanitizer at this point in time.
Allison, thank you for the work in this area.
Yeah, thank you.
Applaud the HR departments. I think every company's been dealing with this, and there's a big lift there, and I think it gets missed a little bit in the school because this is a good plan, and I think it's important for employees to feel confidence and the bravery to go back to work and go do it. Everybody's got to get back out there, and I think these pieces to that puzzle are really important. So thank you for the work, and I hope it helps with our staff feeling more confident that we as a board and a district really care about that side of the ledger too. So
Yes, absolutely, and thank you guys for your work. Well, especially Mary Beth and Michelle on employee experience. You guys have done a lot with me this summer, helping me help staff feel as comfortable as possible. But yeah, we're working really hard. It's been a long month just working with staff, and hopefully this document helps. Thank you all for listening to the feedback around masks, because I know a lot of teachers felt very heard. From the feedback I got through the accommodations request of, they were very thankful that the mask or the face covering rules came down as they are now to help them feel more safe at work. So I know that, the work that you guys are doing is appreciated by them and is making a difference. So thank you.
Just want to clarify one part,
Sure.
Allison, on the self-reporting of symptoms and the request for leave based on symptoms. Are we then requiring that all test positive and negative results are handed back to HR?
So I will be working with Diana Duffy, who has kind of been deemed the lead nurse throughout COVID. So I will be working closely with her on my questions, but yes, they will need to report that directly to HR, or if they feel comfortable with their supervisor, they can report it to them, and then they're going to turn right back around and work with me. But Diana Duffy and I will be working in close contact all school year because we want to have consistency between students and staff. If I have a family member that we're awaiting test results, we want to treat the student in that same way as a staff member, as far as, do we encourage you to come to work? Do we say, no, you need to stay home? We want to have some level of consistency there. And I'm not an expert in COVID or what staff should be doing, so I'll be leaning heavily on her expertise as well. And then there are some, as far as like the FFCRA leave goes and the FMLA amendment leave, there's some documentation that's required, just as with any other kind of governmental leave. So I'll be able to get documentation as far as, was there a positive test, or were they tested, or do they need to quarantine? All of that needs to be accompanied by physician's note. So.
If there's no other questions, I'll approve the Norwalk Community School District Return to Work Plan as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, David. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the NCSD Return to Work Plan, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that has been approved. Thank you, Allison. DT, the first reading of board policies.
We're getting really close to the end of the 500 series, so thank you to the policy subcommittee for all your hard work. And then we've got some that flow down from some changes in state law. And so these have all been vetted by the policy subcommittees. Questions are welcome. I would bring the board's attention to board policy 508.2, which is open night. And so this was one that we put out in front of Mr. Lammers, Mr. Lipovac, from an activities standpoint, and then also our principals, to see if they wanted to implement this, and they thought it was a good idea, along with the policy subcommittee. So in keeping with good community relations, student school activities will not be scheduled on Wednesday night beyond 6:30 p.m. or whenever possible. And it's the responsibility of the principal, activity director, or designees to oversee the scheduling of school activities for compliance with this policy. This policy will be in effect from September 1st through May 1st. And so, any questions about policy revisions? If not, then I'd entertain a motion to approve the policy revisions as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of the board policies, updates, and review as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the first reading of board policies as presented have been approved. Okay, now we have the administrator evaluation instrument. Dawn, you have both of these.
Yes, both the district leader and the school leader, they're the same evaluations we've done for the last 2 years in the eye observation system. So those are basically the identical ones we've done for the last 2 years. They're still the same.
Do you need these to be approved again, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They can be in one.
Do we need them singly, or can we do them both together?
You can do them both together.
I think
Okay,
together.
thanks.
I'll make a motion to approve the administrative evaluation instrument for district leader evaluation form and the school leader evaluation form as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, those evaluation tools have been approved. Now, we are at the point of going into closed session.
So we'll bid adieu to Patrick. And then Mike Grubb, can we cut the live feed and then just ask the student black shirts to leave? Because we've got